Yo, what up, YouTube? Welcome to the tier list. First things first, let's just immediately start talking about the parameters of how we're judging this, because I feel like we just got to get right into it, right? So this is a bit of a strange game to do a thing like a tier list for, because it's not very competitive. There's really no great matchmaking. I mean, there's okay matchmaking, and a lot of the killers and the characters in this game do a lot differently in terms of results when you're playing against people that know what they're doing versus people that don't know what they're doing. So I just want to start right out by saying that I think almost every single killer in the game, if you master that killer, you're going to be able to win the vast majority of your games just because the matchmaking in this game isn't very tight, and I feel like the overall skill level is not super high in this game for your average match. However, in an attempt to make this tier list as accurate as I can, I'm going to think about the games that you get where the survivors are extremely good. Now, I don't think this happens extremely often. I don't think your normal average public match game has insanely cracked, near perfect level play survivors very often, but it will happen on occasion, right? You will occasionally run into people that are extremely good. And when you run into those players, this tier list should be a which killer stands the best chance against those players type tier list. So basically, extremely high level play. We also are going to be taking account the add-ons, and we're not going to assume that you're running your very best add-ons every game, but we will assume that maybe it's like a course of 20 to 50 games where you're using a very wide variety of add-ons between the best to even just the average add-ons. So having really, really strong add-ons will matter, but we're not going to assume it's every single match. And the last assumption that we're going to make for this tier list is that you're going to be playing across a very wide variety of maps. So not like just your best maps, not your worst maps. And certain killers that work well on every map are going to get a little bit of a boost because of that.
Trapper. C- tier. Okay. Trapper, I think, is not as bad as people say he is. Like, I think a lot of people put him in like the very bottom tier, right? People put him like the very bottom usually, but Trapper's still pretty good. His eerie add-ons are insane, right? I'm repeating myself right now. Okay, if I upload this, I did this before in every set, okay? His eerie add-ons are really good, right? Like Eerie Stone and Bloody Coil are both insane. Also, even on just certain maps, he's kind of insane, right? Like you get like a Trapper on like Dead Dog Saloon, he's nuts. There's also some other maps too that he's really good on, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. I know there's a couple other maps, like I think like Swamp can be really good with him sometimes. Like there's certain maps where he can be pretty solid, just like with certain trap placements and stuff. And realistically, even just the ability to shut down certain tiles in the right moments can be really, really good. The thing that makes him weak, though, is that survivors, when they're smart, can basically, A, pay attention to what's being trapped, or B, really the big downfall to Trapper is that if survivors realize it's a Trapper, they can play really aggressively on him, because essentially what you can do is you can basically run up the Trapper and then like follow him around and just disarm every trap that he sets. And then he basically has to make the choice between either A, letting you disarm every trap he sets, or B, chasing you. But if he's chasing you, then you know what's trapped, and you aren't going to step in traps because you know what he's already trapped. So you can just loop him, because realistically in a chase with no traps, he's just a normal killer, right? He has no chase power. So like if you're a good looper and you just play really aggressively on him and make sure you're like harassing his traps a lot, you can basically like shut down his power almost altogether. Basically as like a solo survivor, essentially, which is pretty insane. So that makes him weaker, which is another reason why his add-ons are so strong, right? Like both his eerie add-ons, one of them injures you whenever you disarm a trap, which is obviously good. Free health states is always amazing. And the other one automatically resets a random trap every 30 seconds. And if you run either one of those, then you're then like you punish the survivors way more for playing aggressive, right? So like if we were saying Trapper with his eerie add-ons every single game, honestly, I might put him in like C+. Maybe even higher, but maybe not. Maybe B- would be a little too high. If you had eerie add-ons, like if you had double eerie's every game, it could even be like up here. But realistically, I'm not judging around that. I'm kind of judging around like a fair spread of add-ons. I do feel like if you never ran eerie add-ons, he would probably be D tier. So I think I'm going to do like right in the middle. I think like eerie add-ons sometimes, and without eerie add-ons, he's like right here. When survivors play well, there's not really going to be much that you can do. You're just going to get looped. Your traps are going to get harassed. It's going to be hard to actually make any plays. Even like the whole, like, there is some plays you can make where you like trap a loop like while the survivors at the loop and try to catch them off with a speed boost. But even then, good survivors are not going to let themselves get zoned that way, and you're not really going to be able to create hits against good players that way very often, unless they're like already really zoned. So yeah, just not really that much potential to kill people. And obviously taking time early game to set up hurts you a lot as any killer. So yeah, he's still C-, unfortunately. Wraith next. He's B+. Wraith is very solid. let me repeat myself again. He's very, very solid. He has very good mobility, right? He has one of the best, literally one of the best mobilities in the entire game, right? Like he doesn't move at like the speed of like Blight or Billy, but the fact that he just has free movement means like, especially if you're on a map like Larry's or something, like he can navigate that map faster than anyone else almost. Like you just bob and weave out of everything while going like the speed of fucking light. It's crazy. If you've ever seen like really high level Wraith play, like for instance, Wraith is a killer that I didn't really realize his strength potential until I started doing like 1v1s against competitive players. And then they really showed like really how much there is to him. Like there's so many little mind games you can do if you're good with his cloak, right? Like getting in front of people and body blocking, knowing when to cloak, like baiting things with uncloaks, like body blocking people, even on like vaults and stuff. There's so many like little tricks to Wraith where if you're a really good Wraith player, it's insane. And I feel like most people don't know what good Wraith play looks like, which I think is why Wraith, like if you check different tier lists, you'll probably see Wraith all over the place. And I think that's why. I think people at really high level can probably recognize how good he has potential to be. For instance, there's a competitive player named Virtual. He literally did a win streak at one point. This still blows my mind. He did a win streak one time where the win condition was 4k3, which basically means that in order for it to count as a win, he has to kill them before they pop 3 gens. They can only pop 2 gens. If they pop more than 2 gens, he counted as a loss. So he had to kill them with them only popping 2 gens or less. And he got to like 40 some wins in a row that way, which is crazy, dude. Like that is so crazy hard to do. And yeah, I mean, that's because like really, really good Wraith players, people like Virtual that really know the ins and outs of this killer, like I'm telling you, like people are not used to seeing good Wraith play and they're not comfortable with it. That being said, if they are comfortable with it, this tier list is based around good survivor play, right? If they are comfortable with Wraith, I don't think like, I mean, based off what I just said, it sounds like he's like S tier. Realistically, I do think good Wraith play against most survivors is like S tier, honestly. But realistically, if the survivors do know what they're doing against Wraith and they're very comfortable against them, he's still good. He has a lot of mobility. He can, like, once he gets snowballing, it's really hard to like catch up because he's just everywhere at once, you know, on top of the stealth. But realistically, he does get looped a while. Like you can take him on a good chase, especially if you have like exhaustion perks and you're smart with positioning. Fast reset perks help him a lot. Like really good healing perks really hurt him a lot because obviously you want people injured so you can sneak up on them and whatnot. So like as the survivors are running stronger and stronger perks and, you know, being more and more comfortable against them, he definitely does get weaker. So I think B+ is a good spot. Like this is like I think the B+ tier is like a strong killer. You definitely can snowball and get into a position where you're winning, but survivor, like correct survivor play is going to make you struggle a bit still. B+ is a good spot for him, I think. Very, very strong though. Very underrated. I think if you don't know why Wraith is here, then I would highly suggest looking into high tier Wraith play because it really is interesting. It's very like interesting to see. Billy is still S tier in my opinion. Billy got some changes that made his chainsaw slower. They nerfed some of his add-ons, I think, as well. Like a little bit. They changed boots a little bit and made the turning rate slower. They also made the overdrive speed and chainsaw a little bit lower. So you can't quite do like to the same level the crazy shit he did before, but he still kind of does it to a lesser degree. Like he still can hit some insane curves. Like I still think he's an insane threat, and even just him holding out his chainsaw threatens the survivor so much because you're like, dude, he can curve around like FYZ thing. Like there's so much zoning potential with Billy, and I feel like his skill ceiling is so high because of that. Like knowing how to control the chainsaw is one thing, right? Like knowing how to physically do a curve is one thing, but knowing like how to threaten with the chainsaw in a way that zones the survivors into a spot where you could actually like either hit a chainsaw or just break like the pallet and then catch him with the next one. Like there's so much skill to this killer, and like a good, very strong Billy player that is good at winning mind games will absolutely obliterate teams. I do think he's a little bit risky though, because sometimes you do just got to send chainsaws, and there can be a lot of variance between like, if your chainsaw happens to land, sometimes you'll get like a huge result and you can snowball it into a win. And if you happen to like, you know, miss a couple chainsaws back to back that are important ones, you can sometimes get like bad results. So he has a bit of variance, but I feel like if you're good at Billy, if you're good at forcing survivors into positions where they are playing like these like rough 50-50s where if they lose the 50-50 they get chainsawed, like that's crazy. He can be insanely strong. Obviously one shot downs is nuts. His mobility is nuts. Like he is just very, very insane. Like he's still really, really nuts. I think a lot of people call him A+ tier now or whatever, but I still firmly believe he's S tier. I think Billy is very, very, very strong. Nurse is clearly still S tier. I mean, Nurse is like the queen of DBD, bro. She's been S tier since day one. Like she's never not been S tier. This is like the killer where like the second she released, everybody knew she was OP, and she's never stopped being OP. What I find interesting about Nurse, and something that I think is interesting that everybody should keep in mind, because this goes into a lot of different discussions about DBD. Nurse really, like, the only thing, not the only thing, but pretty much the only thing she has going for her is that she is absurdly strong in chase. That's like essentially her whole kit. Like, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but her mobility, like her like A to B mobility, is actually like less good than normal 4.6 killers, at least if there's no objects in the way. Obviously she breaks collision, so like blinking through a building might be faster than walking around it, right? Or like on multi-floored levels, like blinking up and down is obviously really insane. But like if we're talking like if you're on like ARP or something, like as I was resting place, and you're just like going from one side to the other in a straight line, a 4.6 killer actually goes faster than she does blinking. I'm pretty sure, like, by a little bit. Someone did a chart at one point. I think Devu did a chart at one point, and it's like a little bit. So her mobility, genuinely not that good. Like her mobility is generally not that good at all. She just kills people ridiculously, insanely fast, and that's basically her whole kit. But that's really all you need. Like, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing about this game altogether, is if you can kill survivors quickly, nothing else really matters. That's all you need to be a top tier killer. If survivors are unable to actually maintain a chase with you for any amount of time at all, congratulations, you're a high tier killer. And keep that in mind, because that's going to be really important going forward with balancing other, with judging other killers, right? There's going to be some other killers that I come to where that same logic is going to apply. So yeah, Nurse, I mean, again, if you know anything about Nurse gameplay, she just blinks on top of you, right? There is a big difference. Okay, I do want to throw this out there because I do think there are some people out there that like think Nurse is like jukeable. I see a lot of people say shit like this. People say like, oh, Nurse is totally jukeable, it's fine. And like, don't get me wrong, some nurses are jukeable. There's definitely like risky ways to play Nurse and safe ways to play Nurse, right? And like if you play her in risky ways, you can maybe get downs like a little bit faster, whereas like if you're playing a safe way, sometimes you have to like walk people down a little bit before you even start charging a blink just to get like a safer blink. But if a nurse knows how to play safely and go for like safer blinks, it's really, really, like, there's like nothing you can really do about it, right? Like, they might have to go for risky stuff sometimes, but typically good nurses will know when to go for the risky stuff and when not to, and it's so hard to deal with. It's so hard to deal with. So yeah, she's S tier, definitely on top of Billy as well right now, I think. Like, Billy has good mobility and everything, but like, Billy can be looped for a while, whereas a good nurse really cannot. Like, you're not going to loop a good nurse for any amount of time at all. Like, you might dodge like one set of blinks, and that's probably it. You're probably going to die in the next set no matter what. So yeah, she just kills people way too fast. It's so hard to actually create any pressure on gens because you're just constantly having to unhook people and pick people up from being slugged because she's just constantly getting hits and downs. She's definitely S tier. Yeah. So Myers now. Wait, Myers got buffed recently, right? I feel like even with Myers buff, he's still pretty rough, right? Like, what'd they do to him? He's now 4.6 when he's in tier 1, right? Unless you have Scratch Mirror. Or no, he's 4. Wait, is he 4. No, he's 4.4, right? He's not 4.6, he's 4.4. Yeah, he's 4.4 when he's in tier 1. But not 4.6. And he stalks better from farther away and stalks a little bit worse from close. They kind of nerfed like tombstones and stuff as well. Like, they kind of nerfed his like higher end add-ons, but they made like his general good, like his like most of his play better. The thing about Myers is I still feel like they also made getting to tier 2 faster, which is good as well. The thing with Myers is he still basically suffers with the same things he suffered with pre-nerf. Like, or pre-buff, I mean. I think the buffs were good, don't get me wrong. Like, I think they were good changes. But he's still, like, he has a weak early game. Like, early game, most important time out of any time for killer, right? The early game is when there's no pressure on the survivors. All 4 of them can be doing gens. You don't have anything, like, gen pressure is basically, like, you getting hooks and downs forces them off of gens because they have to actually get unhooks and shit or else their teammates die. Like, that's what gen pressure is, right? In the early game, you have no pressure. There's no one on a hook. There's no one being chased. So, like, the fact that he takes a while to get going hurts him a lot. Any killer that takes a while to get going is always going to hurt a lot, right? But even like his problem is that even once he gets going, he's still not that good. You know what I mean? Like there's some other killers in this list, like Oni, for instance, who is like a good example of a killer that like takes a while to get going, but once he does, he's insane. Myers is like not that insane. Like, you get tier 3, and what do you get? 1-shot downs and like a slightly faster vault. I say slightly faster. It's pretty fast. A pretty fast vault, 1-shot downs, and like a minusculely larger lunge. And that's it. Like, I still feel like you're still basically a 4.6 killer with no chase power. Like, your only chase power is like your faster vaults. right? And even then, a survivor that's like aware of the fact you have faster vaults, it's pretty easy to play around that. Like, it's pretty easy to go like, oh, the only play he has is that he has faster vaults, so let's just watch out for windows and make sure we don't miss position. And then there you go, right? Like, I feel like the actual main threat of Myers, unironically, when you're playing against good players, is camping hooks, actually. Like, unironically. I feel like that's where Myers actually feels strong, is because, like, it's hard to know sometimes how much stock he has. So, like, sometimes going for an unhook against him is terrifying, because you're like, if he insta-pops, like, if he pops up, insta-pops tier 3 and downs me, then we just die. Like, the unhook scenario can be very scary against him because of that. And I think that's honestly where his power comes in way more than, like, a chase power. And I think because of that, I almost want to put him in C- because of the unhook potential, but I still feel like in my heart, I still feel like he's D tier. I still feel like he's one of the weakest killers, man. Like, I just don't feel like he's much of a threat. Like, Tombstone can be pretty good too, right? Like, Tombstone with play with your food can be decent, but even then, if the survivors like suspect that you have it, they can just force lockers, and then even that should be hard. So, like, even that should be not much, right? Like, usually it's pretty obvious what a Myers is a Tombstone. They just do nothing but stalk. You can usually tell that they have play with your food because almost all of them are going to run play with your food with a Tombstone. So, like, if a Myers is doing nothing but stalking, and if he very clearly is farming play with their food stacks, survivors are just going to start staying near lockers, and they're just going to hop in locker anytime you pop tier 3. So, I think with proper survivor play, I think if survivors just play smart, I think Myers is pretty dog shit. I think he's pretty bad. I don't think he deserves to be any higher than D tier. I think D tier is probably where he should go. I mean, maybe, I think you could make an argument for C-. I think you could. But that's the highest he goes, right? Maybe, again, maybe once I start putting more people into these tiers, maybe I'll change my mind. But I definitely think my gut tells me he's still, like, bottom 3 in the whole game, honestly. He's still pretty bad. Speaking of which, Hag. Now, Hag is, oh, man. I think I'm going to change my Hag placement from all my previous tier lists. In all my previous tier lists, I've always put Hag at the very bottom. But realistically, she probably shouldn't be. The thing about Hag is that, like, you are basically, you're almost fully reliant on the survivors making mistakes. I think that maybe goes away a little bit if you run things like Mint Rag. Like, I've seen Hag players like Gummy, like Gummy Peachrings, you know, who's a very well-known NA Hag player. I've seen people like Gummy do some really wild stuff with, like, Mint Rag that definitely does take some of the, like, initiative off of survivor mistakes and more of, like, you being able to make plays. But outside of, like, Mint Rag, I feel like typically Hag play almost 100% relies on survivor mistakes and unawareness. And I think if the survivors just do a really good job of being aware of what's trapped and playing around that and not making any, like, crucial mistakes, Hag should get completely dumpstered. Like, she really should get completely dumpstered. Like, Hag should be a killer that, like, almost gets nothing, right? I mean, but realistically, like, if we're being realistic, like, it's not very often that teams make 0 mistakes, right? Like, mistakes always do happen. And Hag is one of those kind of killers where if you make one crucial mistake at a bad time, she punishes it really, really, really well. Like, that's kind of like her whole kit. She just punishes mistakes. So again, if this tier list was based off of average players, like, if I was to go queue up as Hag right now at high MMR or whatever you want to call it and play against, like, random people, I would probably, you know, like, the results would probably make her look like she's like A+ tier or S tier even, right? Because people, like, your average survivor makes a million mistakes, really. But against survivors that make very few mistakes, she honestly should get completely dumpstered. I don't think I'm going to put her in D tier, though. I think the main reason why is because I do think against a killer like Myers and even like Trapper, you can make a mistake and still be fine, right? Like, you can make, like, even a decent sized mistake against these killers and still be, for the most part, fine and still be able to recover and do okay and still, like, probably get all 5 gens done and get out. As Hag, I feel like if you fuck up and you, like, go down in, like, a 3 gen or a 4 gen or, like, basement is, like, God forbid the basement's also in, like, a 3 gen, that shit is, like, brutal, dude. Like, there's no, like, you don't just easily get out of that. Like, she is so hard to come back from once she gets ahead, right? I mean, again, her thing is she basically just doesn't chase and she just traps an area, and then you just have to play around that area carefully. That's basically it. But as long as the survivors actually play around her area control carefully, she's honestly not that good. I think I'm gonna I'll put her above Trapper at least. Because, again, it's weird. If the survivors play correctly, Trapper should be getting better results than her, because she should be getting, like, almost 0 hooks realistically, right? I mean, maybe like a couple. But if the survivors fuck up even, like, a little, man, she can really get going. It's hard. It's really hard to, like, it's hard to judge that. She's such a weird killer to place because I don't know. Like, I will put her above Trapper, but, like, not by much. I still think she should be getting, for the most part, demolished. Yeah, this video, this video slash this, even me recording this right now, or doing this live, I guess, it's probably going to be like 3 hours. sorry in advance. Yeah, it's hard to do tier lists and sum them up quickly. You know what I mean? Yeah, she can snowball hard, but that's the thing. She shouldn't be. Like, I think that's the thing. Yeah, like she can snowball really hard, but the thing about this is that, like, okay, if we compare her to like another killer, right? Like, for instance, if we compare her to like another snowbally killer, like Oni, right? Like Oni is the type of killer that, like, again, he kind of struggles when the survivors play correctly, but he can snowball really, really well. I think the difference is like not making a mistake against Oni, I would say, is like miles harder than not making a mistake against Hag. Like, to be quite honest, it's pretty fucking easy to not make a mistake against Hag if you just are like a semi-decent player. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't find it that hard at all. Like, you know that she's going to be controlling like a big web of traps near like a gen setup, and all you got to do is just don't go into the gen setup while you're injured, right? Like, if you're injured, just stay the fuck away from her gens and her traps until someone heals you or until you're able to heal yourself. Only go in when you're full health. Make sure that when you do go in, you have an exit plan, so if you get hit, you can get out safely and not go down. And basically just don't go down in her gen setup. That's basically it. If you just make sure that anytime you go down, it's like miles across the map from whatever gen she's holding, that's it. Ta-da, you win. That's literally all it takes. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really that bad to do at all. Like, it's pretty easy, as a matter of fact. So, like, again, the problem is that if you do fuck up, she snowballs really hard. I just think it's too easy to, like, it's too easy to play safe against her. Whereas, like, some of the other killers that punish mistakes, it's like the mistakes are more like with a good Oni, like a really good Oni that knows how to play M1. Like, just saying don't get hit, lol, can be really, really hard when the Oni player knows how to play M1 killer. You know what I mean? Like, it's tough, man. I mean, shit. I literally scrimmed. Okay, I'll save this for the Oni talk later. Never mind. I'll talk more about Oni when I get to him. Sure. Okay, C minus. C minus is where she goes. It's fine. Doctor. I'm so sad about Doctor, man. Doctor is like, he's such a fun killer, and I like him so much. But man, he's kind of dookie. You know what I mean? Whoa, where did he just go? Did Doctor just disappear? What? Oh my god, he went back there. What the fuck? That was scary. What the hell? Anyway, sorry. Doctor's gonna go in C+. He is not very good, unfortunately. I like him a lot. I think he's fun. I think he's neat. But I think he's not that good. I mean, the thing. So basically, obviously, you guys probably know how he works, but he shocks you to basically deny your ability to do anything, right? Like, if he shocks you, you can't throw a pallet or vault a window or do anything for 2.5 seconds. But he slows down a little bit to shock, right? Every time he shocks you, he basically slows down a good bit, but he's still making up a little bit of distance. So, like, if you're running around like a loop with him, for instance, right? He'll shock you every time before you're about to throw the pallet, and he'll catch up like a little bit. And then he'll do it again, he'll catch up like a little bit, and he'll catch up again. So, realistically, if you're trying to loop a pallet, it'll take a while for him to hit you, but he will eventually hit you, right? Like, he will eventually guarantee the hit. It just takes a while. And again, that's kind of like... That's the big difference between if you're going to compare it to someone like Nurse. Like, Nurse gets guaranteed hits, but it's like instant. Like, if she's close to you, you're getting hit in the next like 10 seconds, and you can't really avoid it. With a Doctor, it's like you can stall that hit out and make it take like 45 seconds, which is a massive time difference. Like, that changes everything. On top of that, a well-organized team of survivors, what makes that even more brutal, and if you guys have ever seen really, really high-level play, Doctor is so rough for this, because the thing about Doctor is that's how he plays, right? You can force hits by basically like shocking people, but the thing is like smart survivors can literally like body block for their teammates, and it's brutal, man. Like, you get somebody injured and then you're chasing them, and then you're in that situation where you're circling like a pallet, and you're shocking him once, you're going and doing another loop, shocking him again, doing another loop, shocking him a third time, you do another loop, and then you're finally like close enough that you're about to hit him, and then a teammate runs in and takes a hit. And then you have to hit the teammate, and then the survivor you're chasing gets a bunch of distance, and then you're like, okay, so do I do that all over again? Like, do I have to do the 3 shocks and do 4 loops around before I hit? Like, it's just crazy. Or you chase the injured person that you hit, and then someone else comes in, the first person heals up, someone else comes in, does the same thing. Like body blocking and like heavy altruism, especially when it's smart. Like, smart altruism against Doctor can be brutal, bro. It can be brutal. Like, really, really hard to deal with. That being said, Doctor still does have some like little cheeky mind games you can do. Like, there's little things you can do, like fake shocking to get them to like path differently. Like, there's a lot of like cool little things you can do with Doctor. Also, Doctor gets a lot of information from his power too, which is definitely valuable. Like as the skill player the skill player, as the skill of the killer player goes up and up and up, information becomes even more valuable, right? Like giving like a really, really good skilled killer player the information of like where all survivors are on the map is incredible in terms of like their decision making in macro and how much pressure they can apply. And the fact that he gets that static blast back like every like 45 seconds or whatever it is, and he just gets constant info with it, plus like the illusions and stuff too, are honestly pretty nuts. I do think if you don't run discipline with him, he becomes significantly weaker too. Like honestly, if like the discipline add-on was like removed, I would say he was like down here. But like discipline's strong. His add-ons are solid in general for like tracking, chase, everything else. He's good. Like he does get downs. I think if the survivors aren't really good, he can honestly pop off. Like he can do well against bad survivors, but the second you start getting good survivors, he struggles a lot. Really fun killer though. Really fun killer. I love like this is probably like my favorite low tier killer, I think. Like out of all the low tiers, he's probably the most fun to play as and against. Like he's really, really enjoyable. Like I love Doctor myself personally. I mean, not everyone's going to, but I love him. He's good, or sorry, he's fun, just not that good. Very, very, very loopable in the sense that people can waste a lot of time, even if you do eventually get to down no matter what. Huntress is another weird one. I think I have to put Huntress in. Oh man, she's so map dependent too. If it wasn't for her map dependence, I feel like I would maybe put her higher. But man, like her map, like some maps are just so brutal for her, and yeah, I think I gotta put her in B-. I think B- is where she goes. She's weird because Huntress is again one of those killers where like if the survivors don't know, she's snowbally, right? Like you're gonna hear this a lot from a lot of the snowbally killers. Like against survivors that are kind of bad and don't really know what they're doing, she'll sometimes look A+ tier or S tier because she'll just be like hit down, and suddenly everyone's like dead and you're like, what the fuck? You know, like that happens a lot against her in like public matches. But again, I say public matches, but even in like public matches, there's plenty of people that know what they're doing, right? If you run into a squad that actually knows how to play well against Huntress, which is like basically positioning well and not going near those like low wall loops, right? Like if you're playing a super low wall loop, she's just gonna kill you every time. But if you're playing like jungle gyms, shack, main buildings, even like certain like fillers that have like high rocks around them where you can like circle the rock a lot and kind of create a 50-50 every time you make it to the pallet, like tiles like that can be really strong against her and she can struggle a lot. So yeah, realistically Huntress is not that strong as the survivors get better. And realistically, every chase should be rough. Like you should struggle a lot in chase when the survivors are good. But I still think she's the whole way up at B- at least, because she is one of those killers where once you do get going, it's really hard to stop her from going, right? She's one of the best hook campers in the game. Like if you're trying to unhook against a Huntress and she's nearby, she will just slaughter you, dude. She'll like down the person unhooking, she'll fucking instantly hit the person off the hook, potentially down them too. Like she's awful to try to unhook against. Like if someone goes in basement against Huntress and she stays anywhere remotely close, say goodnight. That motherfucker is dead. Like don't even try. Like it's like Bubba level of camping, honestly. It's pretty insane. So yeah, her hook camping is nuts. Again, just her ability to apply pressure across the map is definitely a little bit underrated, I think, right? Like you got to be careful about like what gens you do and stuff, but generally aware players are probably able to avoid cross maps anyway, so it's kind of fine. Again, really fun killer. I think she's really fun to play as and against. I enjoy her a lot, just not super strong. B tier is probably where it is. Also, she's really slow. I didn't even say this, but she's probably like the slowest killer in the game, right? She's 4.4, which means she's slower than like the average killer that's 4.6, and that's meters per second, right? And also, she has to stop and reload, right? So not only is she already slower than most killers, she has to like stop and open a locker every once in a while just to use her power, which means technically she's even slower than 4.4, kind of. Like it's pretty rough. So her lack of mobility hurts her a lot as well, right? Like super low mobility. She basically like, if you want to have a successful Huntress game, you're basically relying on popping off and hitting a lot of hatchets. Like it's basically it. It's the only way you can do it. And just I think survivors are too. It's too like easily possible for survivors to like avoid that, right? Like I think they're able to play safe against her a little too easily. And yeah, her add-ons, I don't even really, Eerie Head's not even that big of a deal, honestly. Like Eerie Head is like a pain in the ass, but you get one hatchet. It's really not that crazy, honestly. So yeah, I don't like even her add-ons are like nothing too special. So yeah, B-. B- I think is fine for her. Bubba is man. Yeah, Bubba is unironically, Bubba can be kind of scary sometimes when the Bubba players are really good, right? Like Flick Bubbas can be kind of scary. I think Bubba's definitely the type of killer where like if you underestimate him and you like eat a chainsaw at a bad moment, he can definitely like be kind of, he can get a little rough. Like obviously his hook camping is incredible, right? Like he camps hooks better than almost any other killer in the game. But however, I think kind of like a lot of the other killers on this lower part of this tier list, it's really easy for good survivors to play safely against them, right? Like you can just kind of run around from pallet to pallet, throwing every pallet, not taking any risks, and you can basically guarantee long chases against them almost no matter what. And again, as long as you're smart about where you die and what gens are getting done and staying away from basement, realistically, good teams should never really lose to a Bubba ever, right? I think unironically, I'd put Bubba like... Do I put him below Hag? I think I do. I think like at least Hag has potential to snowball into a win if they fuck up. I feel like Bubba, I guess Bubba can snowball into a win if they fuck up too. I'm gonna put him above Hag. I'm gonna put him above Hag at least, because I feel like he's a little bit more direct at least. Whereas Hag is like fully reliant on fuck ups. I feel like he like kind of is reliant on fuck ups, but you can at least get something done if they don't fuck up, right? Like he's I think above Hag, but he's definitely not. I don't think he's as good as Doctor, like unironically, right? That feels a little. Wait, is that crazy? Doctor being a whole tier above Bubba, is that correct? Maybe you should go see. No, right? I don't know. This one's actually hard. I don't know. What C? Okay, what's the difference between C- and C+? I gotta figure this out in my head right now. Like same tier as Trapper. Is that correct? No. C. Okay, C+. I'm gonna put him bottom of C+. I feel like he's a little bit better than Hag and Trapper, and like. If Doctor is better than Bubba, it's only by like a little bit. I don't think like Doctor's like I don't think he's a whole tier better than Bubba. There ain't no way, right? This feels better to me. C+. Yeah, I think C+ is probably better. Still definitely a weak killer, right? Definitely among the weaker killers, but not like bottom of the barrel bottom. Oh, Freddy. Okay, Freddy is like, this is with the rework, okay? Okay, keep in mind, if I end up releasing this as a YouTube video, this is with me playing, I've played the PTB, and as of me recording this, they have not announced anything that's being changed from the PTB. So I don't know. Knowing my luck, I'm probably going to record this, and then like tomorrow they're going to like release like, here's the dev notes for what we're changing from the PTB, and they're going to be like, Freddy's completely different now or something. I don't fucking know. But like, this is with the PTB Freddy that I just played like a week and a half ago or whatever, like or like whenever it was, right? Again, quick refresher, they basically made Freddy able to teleport to all gens, whether they were completed or not. You're able to teleport to exit gates now, I'm pretty sure, as well. You're able to teleport to people healing if they were asleep. Like, when people were asleep and healing, you would get Killer Instinct on them, and you can teleport to the heal, which was fucking crazy. His snares were no longer a trap that you put down. They were like a projectile that went through walls like 12 meters in front of you. And if you hit somebody that was asleep, they would get slowed down the same way as the current snares. But also they had like a 5-second cooldown, which is like nothing at all. He also had an add-on that would add 1 second to the slowdown. Basically, he had an add-on that was like a yellow add-on that I feel like everyone's gonna run, where essentially the hinder lasts for 5 seconds, but also your power has a 5-second cooldown. So basically, as long as you're continuously if you're just hitting them with your snare over and over again, they're literally permanently slowed, basically. And you don't slow down that much from using your snare either. Like, you slow down to like 4.0 from 4.6, I think, from using your snare. So honestly, his chase will be pretty fucking annoying. Honestly, his chase is going to be pretty goddamn annoying. And considering he has a lot more stuff in his kit now, right? Like, I unironically think the whole healing Killer Instinct thing, I think is a way bigger deal than people realize. Because I really don't think you're going to be able to heal. Like, I think a good, strong Freddy player, if you're going to want to heal against them, you're literally going to want to go find an alarm clock, wake up your teammate, make sure neither one of you are asleep, and then heal, which basically makes healing take longer in general, right? And if they don't do that, then you're going to be able to snowball really, really hard. Honestly, he really did get a lot in his kit. Obviously, this is an early placement, so like, if you ask me again in a month, I could change my mind, right? But realistically, I unironically think right now, my instinct is telling me B-. Like, I think he's right around Wraith here. I think as a matter of fact, I think Wraith is a perfect, like, example of a killer that is, like, similar in strength. Like, high mobility, high information. Once you get snowballing, I think it's going to be really easy to keep the snowball going because of all the info you get, right? Like, knowing when people are healing and also where they're healing and being able to teleport to it is crazy. The fact that like his snares now are actually a pretty significant chase power, to the point where, like, again, you're still going to be able to loop new Freddy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like Freddy's going to destroy people in loops, but like, you're going to have to loop him similar to like Clown now, right? Like, you know how you like loop a Clown where you almost like never loop pallets and you just like pre-throw a lot and like play really safe? You're probably gonna have to do that against Freddy now, most likely, like most of the time, you know? Because like the snare hitbox was also pretty generous. Like, it was pretty big. Like, it wasn't easy, or sorry, it wasn't easy to juke it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I think he's not going to be like insanely deadly in chase, but I think all the little other things are going to make him better, right? He also has. They also gave him pallets, and I didn't even talk about this, but they gave him dream pallets and dream snares at the same time. And the pallets were like this weird, funky zoning tool that also seemed like it had potential to be like a high skill scaling thing. That also added a lot of value. Like you could basically put down fake pallets, but the survivors can see that they're fake pallets, but they only see that the pallets are fake when they're like within like 5 or 6 meters of them or something. So like, for instance, I was on the PTB against a Freddy that was really good. It was like this one really good Freddy I ran into, and I was like running away from him just casually, and I saw a pallet in the distance, and I went to run to it, and I turned my camera around to look at the Freddy, and I wasn't looking at the pallet I was running to because I already saw it. And the next thing I knew, I was running up to it, and it exploded in my face and damaged me. And I was like, what the fuck just happened? Like, it's actually unironically, like, I think the pallets are a little bit better than people are giving them credit. Like, they're not amazing, don't get me wrong. Like, I think when the survivors are aware that they're fake, then they just get no value at all. But I think you can definitely catch people off guard sometimes and just get free damage, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of neat. I think he has a lot of power in his skin. I think he's got a lot of potential. I think B+ is a good place for him. I think he enters like the upper half of killers by like a little bit with this buff, which is cool to see because Freddy's been at the bottom for so long now. So it's actually really cool to see. I feel pretty good about this placement. This could change, but I think for now, this feels like a good place to put him. I feel like he's got a lot of power now, which is exciting. Honestly, very, very exciting. Pig. I keep putting him at the end. Pig is still unfortunately not very great. She did get buffed like maybe like 6 or 9 months ago or something at this point. I don't even know. Her dash is better now, which is cool. I feel like you can't really loop a pig as comfortably as you used to, which is nice. But I still feel like you can like if you do like greed a pallet and you try to loop it and you give her pallet control, which I guess I should define everything, okay? Like if I say pallet control, I'm basically saying like there's a pallet and you're looping an object near the pallet, right? Pallet control means like the killer is under the pallet, right? Like if you have as a survivor have pallet control, that means you're standing on the pallet, and at any point you can just throw the pallet and then you have a thrown pallet that's safe, right? Or safer, right? If you give the killer pallet control, that means that you loop around and then the killer goes under the pallet, and that means like you're kind of at the mercy of their power at that point, right? They can use their power against you and you have to like loop back around to get to the pallet. That's essentially what that means. But basically, if you give pig pallet control, it like kind of puts you in a spot where you're able to get hit, but it's even still like it's not even a guarantee, right? Like there's certain killers where like if you give certain killers pallet control, it's almost like a guarantee. Like Clown, if you give Clown pallet control on most pallets, I don't know, oh wait, Clown's up next. Okay, well I guess I'm gonna talk about this soon. You know what, it's fine because I'm gonna talk about him soon anyway. If you give Clown pallet control on most pallets, he'll literally just set up bottles and fucking hit you, and like you're probably gonna die. Like you can try to greed and like leave or whatever, but like he'll hit you more often than not. Whereas like Pig is like she'll like put you in like a 50-50, right? She can crouch and then go for a dash, but if you leave while she's dashing, then the dash won't reach. If she like fakes, like she can try faking the dash and standing up, which might catch you off guard if you leave, but also you can predict that too. Like it comes down to this weird like prediction thing where it's not even a guarantee. Really, again, like always, like this is how Pig's always been since her release. Her main power is probably her reverse bear traps that obviously like add a bunch more time to the game, right? Even if you don't get a kill with them, they still add a ton of time. Like they're designed in a way where no matter what, if you have 4 bear traps, the survivor team is going to take 12 tries to get them all off, no matter what, right? Which is also an important thing to say. Like, if you guys don't know that, that's a really important thing. I think a lot of people maybe still don't know that, which is interesting. Like, for instance, if the first survivor that gets their bear trap gets it off on their first box, that means every other person is guaranteed to have a 3 box, a 4 box, and a 4 box, right? Because you have to have 12 tries, 12 total, right? Like it can be 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, or it can be like 1, 3, 4, 4. But no matter what, there's going to be 12 searches. There needs to be 12 searches, otherwise those bear traps aren't coming off. And 12 searches is a lot of time. If you think about it, like running from box to box, it takes a good like, I don't know, maybe 12 seconds to actually do a search. Like realistically, if you get the 4 bear traps down, you're literally adding like maybe a whole generator, maybe a generator and a half worth of time between like the travel time and the actual searching. Like her like the reverse bear traps are very strong in terms of like adding more time to the game. But again, unfortunately for her, she's still just very loopable. She's not very strong in chase. And again, you're going to see this on repeat throughout this whole tier list is that like the main thing that's going to put killers at the bottom of the tier list is going to be being weak in chase. And the main things that are going to put people at the top are going to be being strong in chase. So that's the most important thing. At the end of the day, if you can't force damage on survivors, like if the survivors are able to go long periods of time without taking damage in any way, then gens are going to fly and you're not going to have any pressure, right? Like you need to put survivors in positions where they have to like unhook and you know, do altruism and stuff. And like again, her reverse bear traps kind of do that, but like just not enough considering the rest of her kit is like not very strong. So because of all that, she goes in C-. I think she goes in C-, unfortunately. She's still, again, fun killer. I like her. Like, I like her. I enjoy her. I feel like she could even be C+ too. You know what? I think I will put her in C+. Because you know what? The more I think about it, she does have stealth in her kit, right? If you happen to get like an indoor map, if you get like, you know, like RPD or like Larry's or something, she has stealth in her kit. Although her stealth is, I wish her stealth would get buffed. I feel like her stealth would be nice. She moves so slow when she's crouched, which sucks. Like I wish they buffed that a little bit. Like she does have stealth in her kit. I do think that like if you get snowballing, the reverse bear traps can be pretty brutal. She also has some like cheesy fucking builds you can run if you run like Crate of Gears and like, you know, that one hex perk that makes you scream or whatever. She has some like cheesy perks that can like, or builds that can get you like bear trap kills that can be kind of crazy. And she is pretty snowbally. Like if you get multiple people with bear traps, especially if they're active bear traps, you can definitely put survivors in like a bit of a hairy position where I think she definitely should be like Dr. Bubba tier. Yeah, I think this is good. C+, I think is a good spot for her. She's not quite this bad, but she's not good for sure. Below Bubba, I think. Definitely below Bubba. Yeah. All right, next up is Clown. Clown is unironically, I think, a lot better than people realize, but maybe people do realize now. I think for a while there, people underestimated him. What's funny about Clown is Clown literally used to be considered like, there was a chunk of time where people considered Clown to be the worst killer in the game for like a big chunk of time. And then they slowly did these like little buffs to him over time, right? They made like, okay, I think the biggest buff they gave him was they made him not slow down when throwing bottles, which is crazy. I think that's by the way, I think that's a terrible change. Just throw it out there. I'm not saying that like Clown is OP or anything. I don't think he's too strong, but I think the idea of a killer power not having any punishment whatsoever is literally like what made Old Skull Merchant so horrible, right? Is like, you should be punished for using your power badly. I mean, he does get punished kind of because he has to reload, but even the reload they buffed that too. They made the reload way faster recently as well. Not recently, a while back, but still. Like, he reloads way faster. He doesn't slow down when throwing bottles. They gave him more bottles baseline. They gave him like all these changes like throughout the course of like a year or two. They just kept buffing him like little by little, and now he's kind of nuts, dude. Like he has like 6 bottles by default. They slow you down a lot, especially if you're running the add-ons that almost everybody runs. Honestly, he has a lot of good add-ons. So like that's the thing. Like there's like the add-ons that make slowdown more, right? Like they like make it last a second more, and it's more brutal of a slowdown. He also has add-ons that make his invigoration last longer. There's add-ons where you can see auras while you're invigorated. Like he just has so many crazy good add-ons, and his power, again, you could just throw bottles all willy-nilly and there's almost no punishment because reload is so fast anyway. And it's so nuts. It's so hard to like play against a good clown. Like if you play against a clown that really knows bottle placements, he is tough to play against, man. Like you can sort of kind of get away with like never even kicking pallets. Like I'm pretty sure that there was a clown main. Was it Aranad or am I thinking of somebody else? I think Aranad might have like did a thing where he did like gameplay with clown where he just never kicked pallets. Like he just played every single pallet even after it was thrown, just by like bottle positioning, which is crazy. Like you can literally do that. Like again, that might not be the best way to play. Sometimes you might just want to kick a pallet, right? Don't get me wrong, but like almost nowhere is like perfectly saved against them, right? Like maybe like Shack pallet, but like there's very few pallets that are like perfectly safe against clown. Like usually you can make some kind of a weird play, and yeah, he's really solid. Honestly, he really is. He's very, very deadly. And I think he's, again, one of those killers where if you start snowballing too, it could be hard to come back. I think he, to me, deserves definitely B+ tier. Now, in comparison to these other people in B+ tier, I don't know exactly where, honestly. It's hard. These guys are all pretty strong. I don't know exactly where. Some people are probably going to lose their mind over me putting Clown above Huntress, but I don't really care. I believe this to be true. I believe Clown can force hits better than Huntress can, honestly. Yeah, I think B+. I'm pretty happy with this. I think like maybe like the bottom of B+ though. Like I do think he still can struggle a bit, but he's definitely solid now. He's very, very solid now. Spirit. Wait, is there anything else to say about him? Yeah, there's not really much else to say. Like, oh, wait. Well, the main reason why he's... Okay, I guess I should say the main reason why he's not like A tier, right? Because again, like the thing that makes A tier killers A tier is that they can force hits like really, really well to the point where the survivors almost can't do much about it. The thing about Clown is kind of like Bubba, you can still play super safe against him and kind of just throw pallets. Again, the difference is like with Bubba, a pre-thrown pallet is basically like all you can do is zone and break it, right? Clown, a lot of pre-thrown pallets, you can literally just not kick and get the hit anyway. And that's like infinitely better, right? Like if you're stuck in a loop of like breaking pallet, breaking pallet, breaking pallet, breaking pallet. Like, yeah, eventually, like, the map's going to be out of resources, but the whole time that you're in that loop, they're going to get all the gens done, and then you're going to be fucked anyway. You know what I mean? Like, it's so much better. Like, Clown being able to, like, not break a pallet and just get the down creates pressure, right? Like, that gets survivors off gens, and it makes them have to get off to unhook. It lets you leave that survivor because they're hooked, right? Obviously, you know, it lets you leave them and go chase someone else and get them off gens. Like, generally, getting hits is almost always better. Not almost. I think it is. Getting hits is pretty much always better than, like, clearing pallets, right? So Clown is just able to force hits a bit better, and honestly, again, really well. Like, surprisingly well, you can force hits with Clown. And I really do think he is probably like B tier. B minus, you know, he maybe could go B minus. The more I'm looking at this, the more I'm like questioning whether he deserves B plus. Dude, this whole plus minus tier has got me kind of fucked up. I'm gonna be honest with you, because before I would just say B tier and be confident with that, but like B plus or B minus, I don't know. I'm gonna come back into the end and we'll see. I might move people, but I think I'll say B plus for now. Spirit is still really good. I don't think she's quite good enough to be S tier. Like, just barely. I feel like she is like just barely not S tier. I feel like she's A tier. I mean, she's really, really good. Again, she kind of has like a spirit, or sorry, she kind of has like a nurse-esque design in a way where like she's slow, not very mobile, but extremely deadly, right? Like, she goes into her phase, she moves really fast. There's like little mind games you can do because the survivors can hear your husk or hear where you are. So you can even like mind game people while you're invisible. She creates a lot of 50-50s. I mean, generally speaking, survivors will typically just like run to pallets and try to like do like a little 50-50 play on the pallet. So it's hard to put her S tier because the survivors still do have plays they can make, right? Like, her thing is that she basically forces survivors into these like 50-50 plays where like you can almost never play you can almost never perfectly play safe against Spirit to the point where you're like, I guarantee I won't take damage right now, right? Like, there's very few positions where you can do that. But the survivors still do have options, right? Like with Nurse, again, it's like you almost don't even have options. Like, you can maybe juke one set of blinks, maybe, and then a good Nurse is just going to hit you with the next one immediately anyway. Spirits, like, even good Spirits on occasion could get run for like a little while if the survivor just happens to win a couple 50-50s back to back, right? Like, it's hard to do, but it's possible. So because of that, I feel like I can't really justify putting her in S tier, because she also doesn't have anything else going for her, right? Like, Billy can also get chased for a little bit, but he has insane mobility. He has one-shot downs, right? Like, the fact that all she has going for her is her chase, and she also has no one-shot downs, no, like, crazy high mobility. Like, I think in order for you to be S tier with no mobility like this, and no one-shots, you basically need to be, like, Nurse-level deadly. And she's just not quite Nurse-level deadly. Like, she's close. She's good. She is very deadly. Like, a good Spirit player will fuck your shit up, and you will die fast. But, like, again, all it takes is like one bad chase at a bad moment, and the survivors will be able to recover, come back, and then, you know, again, still super deadly. Compared to all of these fucking losers down here anyway, these fucking dweebs down here, she's insane. Like, she's definitely insane. A good Spirit will rock your fucking world, dude. It's terrifying to go against. So definitely a very, very good killer, just not quite good enough to breach S tier, I don't think. Also, I want to throw it out there. I think Spirit's one of the hardest killers in this game to play. She's probably the only killer in this whole list that I feel like I can confidently say that I fucking suck ass at. Every other killer, I feel like I'm like at least okay, if not like solid. Spirit, I am fucking terrible. I don't know how to play Spirit. She's so hard. I have so much respect for good Spirit players. That's just a side note. But she's insane. So hard to play, and people that can play her well are so impressive, and she can be very, very deadly. Also, a big reason why she's a little bit lower in recent tier lists compared to old ones too is because they nerfed a lot of her add-ons, right? Like Mother-Daughter Ring got gutted, which is what made her so strong. But she still does have some good add-ons, and that helps her case a lot too. So yeah, A+. Yeah. Legion is pretty dog shit. Legion's a weird one because I unironically think, again, it's kind of map dependent, but I think Legion he's bad, but I should say they're bad. But really, like, getting free damage and information can be pretty okay. Like, I think like good killer players playing Legion, I think, okay, for the longest time I used to always put Legion in like D tier, right? And I think the reason why, unironically, is because I feel like for the longest time every Legion player was just like the most dog shit killer player. I'm sorry, there's really no other way for me to say it. Like, there was literally a meme where every time I got a Legion, I would just 360 them in the open, and it would almost always work, because I feel like every like Legion player was a total potato. Like, it was so consistently true, and I don't know why. But I feel like those days have ended. Like, there's actually some pretty decent Legion players out there now, and like every time I see a Legion, I'm like, oh, this dog shit killer. And then sometimes I'll underestimate them and then just get rocked, and I'm like, whoa. Because realistically, like, your power is literally free damage. Like, there's no way to avoid being hit by Frenzy, right, at all. Unless you, like, camp a pallet and throw it at the perfect moment or something, which is hard as fuck. Like, there's almost no way to avoid being hit by Frenzy. So the free damage is obviously nice, right? Like, you really only have to hit somebody once to truly down them, right? Outside of the power. Also, the info can be insane. Like, the tracking can be nuts. Like, you hit somebody with power, and then anybody in your terror radius gets, you know, Killer Instinct reveal, and just that information can be, again, I talked about this earlier with Doctor, but like giving a good killer player, like a good smart killer player, information is really valuable, and that can do a lot in terms of like decision making and knowing where to go and knowing what to do. And I really do feel like this killer is maybe a bit underrated. Also, this is like a little thing, but all 4 of the legions are like short. At least short compared to, like, you know, tall ass motherfuckers like Doctor and Huntress or whatever. So like there are a lot of loops where you can't mind game with tall killers, but you can with people like Legion, which helps them a little bit too in their M1 chase. But that being said, they are a killer where outside of like getting a quad hit in Frenzy, the only way to down a survivor is to chase them as a pure M1 killer. Like, you have to get a pure M1 hit with no chase power whatsoever in order to actually get it down, which is pretty fucking brutal. Like, against good players, that is really, really brutal, man. That's hard as shit to do. Obviously, depending on the map, it could be different. Like, a map like Dead Dog like makes Legion a lot better. You know, maybe like Greenville makes them a lot better. But yeah, I mean, you get a map with like a lot of strong pallets, and Legion's gonna suffer a lot. That being said, Legion's at least the top of C-, right? Do I say C+? I don't think I can put Legion in with these guys. No. Like, if I'm looking at these 3 killers, I don't think I can put Legion with these 3. Honestly. But I don't think Legion is D tier. I really don't. I think Legion is like C-. I think Legion's got a lot of potential there. Like, a lot, like free damage, free information. I think if you're... I think another thing I've learned from doing... again, I know I'm going to talk about this a lot, and this might sound like annoying and big-headed, or I don't know. It's probably annoying, but I don't care. I have to say it. Something I learned, I took like a month or 2 and I grinded like a competitive 1v1 ladder where I basically 1v1 against like some of the best players in the world, right? And dude, that taught me so much, right? Like, for instance, just a normal M1 chase has so much depth to it, right? Like, there's so many things that go into a normal M1 chase, and it's so much more than like I thought before, right? Things like bloodlust management and like knowing when to like bloodlust and when not. Like, there's so many little things that go into play where a really, really good M1 killer still will be a bit of a threat, right? Like, they're still going to be a bit of a threat no matter what. Like, you got to play like near perfect, but that being said, it's not impossible to play near perfect. It's just really, really hard. And I do think Legion's one of those killers where, like, if you get snowballing, you can definitely keep it going with all the info you get. It's just the pure M1 chase, while it can be a little risky, it's just, I don't know, man. On a lot of maps especially, you're just not gonna be able to do shit. It's gonna be too hard to get going, and by the time you do get going, the game will probably already be over because of gen progress. Yeah, I don't know. I'm C-. Yeah, I'm happy with C-. I think that's really weird. I think it's really weird. It's just too loopable, really, right? Like, too hard to force damage, like so many other killers. Too hard to force damage. Okay, Plague. This is such a weird one. Wow, this is such a weird one. Okay, I have a lot of thoughts about Plague. Let me just explain how she works, okay? And like everything about her, okay? Typically, Plague is considered to be like pretty high tier, right? I think most people put her in like the A tier, right? Or whatever the fuck typically. Because A, she's really good at like area control, right? Like, you can hold down like a 3-gen or a 4-gen or something. You can puke on all the gens, and basically, you can basically force everyone to be injured, kind of like Legion, right? But you can do it while also like holding a gen setup and kind of having it happen passively, right? Just by puking on the gens and everything, and having people stay puked on. And essentially, they have to stay injured, or they have to cleanse. And if they cleanse, they give you your power, where you have like that red puke that does damage, right? That's like a projectile, which obviously is going to be strong because it's a projectile. And also, if you know anything about like 3-genning, right? Like, the way that you typically break a 3-gen, like if a killer's holding like a gen setup, typically the way you do it against most killers, like if a Doctor is doing it, or if like a Freddy's doing it, or like a Wraith is doing it, typically the way that survivors play against that is they don't go into the gen setup if they're injured, like almost ever. And they make sure to like go to the other side of the map, heal up, and then only do the gens when they're in the full health. That way, even if the killer like makes a weird play and catches them out of position, you can like take a hit and run away and like safely not go down. Because essentially the way that killers win by 3-genning is you want to get a down in the 3-gen and get a hook in the 3-gen. That way you can camp the hook and the gens at the same time, right? So like the best way to avoid that is by just being healthy in the gen setup. But with Plague, it's impossible because she pukes on everything, and then you're sick, and then you're puking and you're injured. So she's like really good for holding 3-gens in that way, because the survivors have to be really disciplined, right? Like you got to be really careful with your positioning. Like if you get caught out of position against Plague and you're injured, then you go down, she hooks you in the gen setup, and then suddenly your team who are injured have to like, cleanse and then sneak their way in and try to get the unhook, you know what I mean? Or like whatever, like against like a Plague that's like camping and also holding gen. It's just so hard to deal with. Like if she gets like a hook and like a 3-gen, it's one of those like really difficult situations to get out of, and it can definitely get very, very snowbally. One thing I will say is I do think her power, like her like corrupt puke, is a little overrated by people. I think it's obviously strong because like a projectile is always good, but there's honestly a lot of loops where her power becomes like not great. And also like even a lot of like high wall loops become like these scary 50-50s where if you get stuck, I mean, again, a lot of people don't even know this too, but if you get stunned by a pallet while you're in your corrupt puke, it knocks you out of power. So like if you have to chase someone in like a jungle gym or something, sometimes even just that is like terrifying, and it's like hard to actually get damage while trying to avoid the stun. So yeah, like her power isn't like this like end all be all everyone just dies instantly level power, but it is obviously better than just an M1 chase. And her 3-gen setup, like holding is really good. She also counters healing perks, which is kind of nice. But I would argue healing perks aren't even that meta anymore. You know what I mean? Like back in the day, I remember when like Circle of Healing was at full power. It was like a huge deal to counter Circle of Healing. But these days, I feel like there's like 10,000 anti-tunnel perks that are probably more meta. Like healing is obviously still a strong meta choice, but like it's not really that big of a deal. You know what I mean? What do I do with her, man? Where do I put her? I feel like I gotta put her in A-. I don't think she's like... I think she's still strong enough that I don't want to put her in B tier. Like, she still puts you in these really difficult macro positions, right? Like I feel like you have to play against her like so flawlessly, I feel like, in order to not get like snowballed on, right? But it is possible. Like, it is possible to play like that, right? It's just really hard. Like, you have to play so disciplined and perfect, and like, again, Plague still have also, actually, she's definitely an A- because her add-ons are crazy too. That's another thing I didn't even talk about. Like her iridescent add-ons are nuts. She has some of the best iridescent add-ons in the whole game. Like Black Incense and Eerie Seal are literally so game-changing. Those add-ons are fucking absurd. Honestly, if I was thinking about her having those add-ons often, like every game, she'd probably be like A+, because those add-ons are fucking insane. They're so strong. But yeah, I mean, I am doing this tier list based around them having those add-ons sometimes, right? And even without those add-ons, again, really good area control, very deadly, very like, you got to play super safe and careful against her. She does shut down basically all healing, and the corrupt puke is still pretty solid. You definitely could put survivors in really hard positions that like can bait them into making mistakes, and if they make those mistakes, you just snowball like crazy. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with A-. Like, not the most insane chase, honestly. Like, this is probably like the highest you're gonna see any killer that doesn't have an insane chase. Like with her red puke, her chase is pretty strong, but like without her red puke, she's basically like a glorified M1 killer that just is really good at area control. But yeah, this will probably be the highest. Like, this will probably be the highest like killer with not super insane chase that we'll see, because her area control is just so good, keeping everyone injured. Like having them like forcing them to basically give you power if they want to heal. It's just so powerful of a tool. So yeah, A-, I think. Ghostface recently got buffs, and he stalks people way faster now. He also gets his power back a little bit quicker, right? I think those are the buffs he got, which is nice. Also, I want to throw it out there, Ghostface is one of my favorite killer designs in the whole game, right? I'm trying to think about where I'm placing him, so I'm kind of ranting, okay? Bear with me. He's one of my favorite killer designs in the whole game. I think he is the perfect stealth killer. The perfect stealth killer. Like, they literally fucking nailed stealth design with this killer. I don't think they could possibly do better. Because realistically, the way that good Ghostfaces play is they typically don't, like, I think a big thing you'll see, like, I think a number one way to spot, like, a Ghostface player that's probably not that good is that they'll just, like, commit to chases, you know? Like, they'll just chase people around and they'll stalk maybe mid-chase and then just continue chasing or whatever. Good Ghostface players will really utilize the fact that, like, stalk doesn't decay, right? Like, for instance, if you spawn up and then you instantly stalk, like, a meg across the map to, like, 99%, you can just leave that, and that stalk will not go away unless you top it up and fully stalk her, or if she like gets hit at some point is the only way that goes down. So you can essentially like prep people around the map, right? And get them to be like basically like they're not one shot, but they're basically one shot, right? Like for instance, that Meg at any point later, if you like sneak up to a jet and they're on it, you just pop her sock, down her, she's dead. Like there's like nothing you can really do about it as the survivor other than like being hyper aware of where the killer is at all times, which is not easy to do, you know? So yeah, there is a lot of power in like his stealth, and I feel like really smart Ghostface players that use that well are honestly fucking terrifying. Like actually terrifying. That being said, I do think if you're playing on a majority of the maps that are like relatively open maps, if we're assuming that the survivors are playing at like a pretty high level and also like communicating a bit, you know what I mean? Unfortunately, I feel like he's one of those killers where like I don't say this a lot, okay? I'm the kind of person that like will very often like tell people to shut up whenever they complain about Survive with Friends, or even like I hate when people use solo queue as like an example for calling like survivors bad, and then Swift as an example for calling people good, because I think plenty of Swifts are bad and plenty of solo queue players are good, but like I think in this instance, like specifically just having your teammates be able to call out where he is and like where he's going, right? It changes a lot about this killer, like a lot about him, because like he really like I think good level like high level Ghostface play does I think rely a lot on like the sneak surprise factor, right? That being said, I feel like even with all that in the survivors arsenals, I still do feel like he's solid. Like you still can't hide yourself a lot of times, right? Like the survivors aren't going to have literally perma, you know, line of sight on you. Like you will be able to hide yourself sometimes. You still will be able to make sneaky plays. Like the 99 stalking can still be really, really strong. I think one of the biggest plays you can make with him too is if you have multiple 99% people stalked. Like if you have one person hooked and you catch the person that's running for the unhook, like while they're 99% stalked, and then down them near the hook, that's like a near game ending play, right? Like having like a hook and then a guy down like under the hook is like a near game ender, right? That's like half the team out of commission right there if you just slug basically. So solid killer, not amazing though. I feel like not solid enough to be B tier. I think he's C tier still. I want to put him B minus. Like again, I want to put him B minus, and I think it's mostly because I like this killer. I love this killer a lot. I think their design is so cool. I think this is such an interestingly made killer. I think they're like the perfect stealth killer, right? Like I love their like design. I love how they play. I love like watching high level Ghostface players is awesome. Like it's so cool. But realistically, again, with the majority of maps in the game and the fact that like you are reliant on the stealth, right? Like if you try to chase good players, if you just try to play chase normally and you're chasing good players, like they'll just loop you all day. I feel like I might even put him above Bubba. Above Doctor? I don't know. He's somewhere in C+. I don't think above Doctor. I think maybe Wraith. I'm pretty happy with this. I might come back to it, but I think I'm pretty happy with this for now. Yeah, like I think right around there. Again, has potential to pop off, but realistically, it's probably just gonna get looped a bit. I wish I could put him in B, but I just can't. I can't bring myself. He's just not. He's just not, man. It's unfortunate, but he's just not. Yeah, C+ it is. Demo is interesting. Demo is a very like middle of the ground killer, right? He has like that really good dash ability. That has like a pretty generous hitbox. It has like his zoning is insane because he can go in and out of his dash. Like he can like charge a shred and then let go, then charge it and let go without like with barely any penalties whatsoever to like his movement and like, you know, ability to hit people. So his zoning can be really strong. That being said, if the survivors are just aware, like if the survivors are very aware of like the limitations of his dash, you can still loop him a while, right? Like he still does get, he's still possible to be looped a while. He has good mobility with his portals too, but the portals aren't like insane mobility, right? Like you get a limited number you can put down, the survivors can break them, but I still think they're solid. They also did buff his portal speeding recently, which is kind of nice too, but that's not really that big of a change to him. I feel like he's B minus, man. I don't think he's as good as the B plus killers, but I feel like he's like a little bit below them. Like he's either at the bottom of B plus or he's B minus. I think he's B minus. I think it's tough, man. I do think he is pretty strong. Like there's definitely a lot of situations where his zoning can be nuts, but even like the thing is that if the survivors know about crouch checking, which I'm assuming that I mean, again, this tier list is based off of people being good, so I'm going to assume that they do. Even like an open field shred is like not even necessarily a guarantee, right? Like you sometimes will get crouch tech and stuff too, which also makes it a little bit lower. Like I think if crouch tech didn't exist, I think he'd probably be like a B+ killer. And also he'd be fucking miserable to go against. So like just for the record, I love crouch tech. I think without crouch tech, his power would be miserable to go against because that hitbox is fucking giant if you're standing. But yeah, I think B- is probably where he goes. Above Huntress or below Huntress? I don't know if I can put him above Huntress. Huntress just has so much snowball potential, you know? Like again, like I think on average, like he might be like more consistent in terms of like getting like decent amounts of like hooks and or whatever, but I think like Huntress's highs are going to be so much higher than his highs, right? And I don't think her lows are going to be that much lower. So I think he's below Huntress. Below Huntress and B- I think is a good place for him. Yeah. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. Yeah. All right. Oni. Okay, Oni's clearly like an A tier killer, but is he A+ or A-? Let me think. Okay, let me just talk it out. I'm gonna put him in A- for now, and let me just talk about it. Okay, let me like think out loud. Oni again gets countered like decently well by like super safe early gameplay, right? Like if you like essentially he doesn't have a power until you give him a hit. Like his power will passively charge up really, really slowly, but even passively it'll never go higher than like 99%. Like it'll go to like 99, but in order to get your actual power, you need to at least absorb at least one blood orb. And obviously you drop blood orbs when you're injured, so if you can avoid getting injured, he basically just has no power and he's a normal chase killer, right? That being said, like it is hard to avoid being injured a lot of times against good M1 killers, right? Like okay, I mentioned this. I started to mention this earlier for one of the killers. I can't remember who it was, but I think it's Legion. I think it's time to come back to it. Recently, just to give you like an anecdotal thing, recently I was doing practice scrims for the content creator tournament, and I was scrimming against like one of the best teams in NA in comp, a team called Ascent. And they were destroying me as Oni. Like it was like I'm usually pretty confident in my Oni, but they were it was crazy. They were so good. But that being said, even with them being that good, I still feel like there was definitely like a lot of games where I was struggling to get first hit, but there was even a few games where I did get first hit like pretty early. Like it's not like necessarily like super free, right? Like even like good survivors, it's if the Oni is like really good at looking for it, right? Like if you're good at like knowing what chases to drop, what chases to take, when to bloodlust, when not to bloodlust, like if you're really, really good at like the M1 chase, it's honestly not like, it's not like this free thing, right? Like for instance, if we're talking about like Hag, right? I think I brought this up during the Hag section too. Like Hag's counterplay, like, right? Like not letting Hag snowball just boils down to like, don't go into her web of traps while you're injured. You know what I mean? And make sure you have a proper escape route if you do go in. It's like not that hard, right? Like knowing like not giving an Oni a hit early and not letting him snowball is like, okay, you got to know how to play every single pallet. You got to know where the check spots are. You got to know where to run. You got to think about getting zoned whenever he breaks the pallet. You got to know about your next pallet you're going to run to and make sure you get there. You got to make sure that if he tries to bloodlust you, you run to a tile where you can break bloodlust, and you got to shift tech once you get there to make sure that you break bloodlust. Like it's like a fucking paragraph. Like even me trying to explain how to avoid giving a good Oni player power is like, so I can't even do it. It requires me to rant for like an hour. Like it's hard, right? And that's the idea. Like hypothetically, in theory, you can say like, oh, good survivor play completely shuts down this killer because early game is terrible, but like it's difficult, right? It's very, very difficult. And I would argue that even if you do shut down his power for a good like 2 gens, like if you get like 2 gens done before he gets his first hit, he's probably been clearing out pallets that whole time, right? Because if you've done that, that probably means you're running from pallet to pallet and forcing out a lot of pallets. It's still going to be rough because once he gets his power, he's fast as fuck. He's insanely lethal. He's going to down you. He's going to go around the map. He's going to be able to get around the map super quickly, like get different downs. Like you still have to play super careful and super safe, right? Even at that point of the match, he still can snowball and win at like any point. I'm putting him an A+, I think, the more I'm thinking about it. I do think there are a lot of things that, like, again, there's a lot of tools that survivors have. You can force locker to kick him out of power. I think you can punish a lot of Onis that pop their power early by like stealthing it out, which can be a really strong play. But I just feel like generally speaking, like it's just that early game. Oh man, A+ or A-. I'm still torn. I think I'm gonna keep it an A+. It's just again, and honestly, like I feel like there's a lot of maps where avoiding M1 hits can be even harder than others, right? Like I feel like again in like competitive settings or whatever, he's playing on like Cool Tower, which is like it's like kind of in the mid map. But there's a lot of maps that you'll play where the pallets are pretty awful, right? Like you learn to like Midwich, like you know. I would even, okay, this might be a crazy thing to hear me say. Even like Garden of Joy, bro. Garden of Joy does not have that crazy of fillers, right? Like main building is obviously crazy on Garden of Joy. Like there's a lot of weird maps like that where people usually view them as like, whoa, that's a crazy survivor-sided map. But even maps like Garden of Joy, you can get first hit as Oni not that hard on Garden of Joy. Like there's like a couple areas that are really like pain points, but as long as you just don't take chases there and make sure to take chases elsewhere, most of the other palettes are like either like playable or bloodlustable, right? To the point where like you'd be surprised. Like I'd say most maps, it's surprisingly hard to deny a really, really good Oni player for the first hit. You know what I mean? Yeah, don't get started on like Toba Landing and fucking and like Nostromo and like all those like, you know, there's so many maps where like palettes are not super safe. So yeah, and again, Oni once he gets going, insane. Like I've said this a bunch of times before, but I'll say it again. Oni when he's in power is the literal strongest state that any killer can ever be in, right? Like hypothetically, if Oni spawned in his power and just never left it, like if he was just in his power from start to finish, he would be top by miles. Like I would have to make a new tier. I'd have to make like a S++ tier to put Oni in it because it would just be insane. Like he'd like super mobile, one shot downs, 180 flicks, fast pallet breaking, like what the fuck are you doing against it? Like nothing. Like it's crazy. So yeah. Oni's just nuts. I fucking love this killer. Definitely A+ tier. Yeah. That's all. Slinger, to me, and this also might be a crazy take for some people, he's A- tier. He's definitely A- tier. Maybe a little bit below Plague, but definitely A- tier. His power is nuts. A good Slinger player that like is able to hit shots and also zones really well, you just die. Like if you're close to him, you just die. Like you literally have to get away from him. You have to stay far the fuck away. And if he gets within like 10 meters of you, you're just fucking dead. And that's really all there is to it. And any killer that's like that is fucking scary for sure. He is kind of like Huntress, one of the slowest killers in the game though. He's 4.4, right? Slower than usual. And again, kind of like Huntress. I mean, Huntress has to reload at lockers. He has to reload after every shot, which slows him down a little bit more, right? He takes a shot, reloads, takes a shot, reloads. He also kind of suffers from like the doctor thing in like a minor way where like, even if you're guaranteeing hits, sometimes the hit is like you shoot them with a gun, you slowly reel them in, then you get the hit, then you reload, then you catch up, you shoot them again, you reel them in. Like the whole process like takes a little bit too long. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the problem with it. He's insanely deadly. It's just like if the process was like a little bit faster, he would probably be like A+. It's just the process is slow and also he's slow. So like you could even maybe put him as low as like B tier, and I don't think you'd be crazy, but I think he deserves A tier. I think this killer is, again, we're talking like really good Slinger play is fucking deadly, bro. It is deadly. He is strong, dude. He's real strong. And I think people that put him in lower tiers just, I think, haven't seen insanely high tier Slinger play, especially from Slinger players playing safe. I think that's a big thing too. I think a lot of like the streamers you watch or even people you find in public games on Slinger will not be playing like there's a huge difference between playing Slinger to win and playing him for fun. Like for instance, I feel like when I play Slinger, half the time I'm just like going for dumb shots, right? Like there'll be like a tiny hole in a wall and I'll be like, let me shoot a guy through this tiny hole in the wall. And like when you eventually get it, it feels really good and you're like, yay, that was cool, you know? But like that's not obviously like if you're playing to win, you wouldn't be doing that. Like really safe, like zoning heavy Slinger play, while it's less fun to do, is ridiculously deadly. Like it's really, really hard to deal with. So yeah, Slinger, A+, or sorry, A-. Like it's a good spot. Pyramid Head. Pyramid Head is so fucking deadly too, dude. I gotta put Pyramid Head in A+, A-. Oh god, I don't know, A+ or A-. He's somewhere up here. Pyramid Head is so deadly, kind of like Slinger. I think he's a little less like, I think Slinger is maybe a little bit more like guaranteed kind of than Pyramid Head. Like Pyramid Head, like if you play safe against them where you like really like pre-drop pallets and stuff and like play your distance, Pyramid Head kind of gets put in these spots where he really has to take a lot of like risky like shots. But I still feel like good Pyramid Head players that know when to go for those risky shots and when not to go for those risky shots are so hard to play against, dude. Like they're so hard to play against. It's so gross. I mean, his shockwave ability that he does goes through solid walls, right? And shit, it's crazy. Like pallets aren't safe, windows aren't safe. Nothing is really safe other than a ton of distance, essentially. That being said, I think you can get into a situation where survivors are playing their distance really well, and then you kind of have to go for risks. Otherwise, you just have to break every pallet. And if you're losing a lot of those risky shockwaves, then the survivors can snowball on you, which is a little rough. Like they can get ahead and you can struggle a bit. He also bypasses tunneling and hooks in a lot of ways, right? Like if you cage somebody, they don't get 50 perks in the game, right? Like they don't get DS off the record, babysitter, reassurance, decisive strike, dead hard. Like take your choice of one of the 30 perks that they lose out on when you cage them, which is also kind of a big deal, right? So bypassing that's kind of nice. But other than that, he's a pretty straightforward killer, right? He's 4.6, so he's faster than Slinger, right? Baseline. What's funny is he's 4.6, but when he puts a sword in the ground to send out his power, he literally goes 4.4. Like, he goes Slinger's normal speed when he's ready to send out power, which is still to this day I find crazy. I can't believe that that's never been changed. Like, literally, he goes, like, Hag level speed, Huntress level speed, while zoning at the same time with his power. It's so absurd. Like, his zoning is fucking nuts. I think it's second to none? I didn't sound very confident when I said that. I think if you say second to none, you're supposed to be confident. I wasn't very confident in that. I think it's second to none. I'd have to look at some of the others, but his zoning is fucking ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, but his just pure deadliness levels plus his ability to like bypass tunneling. I think he deserves A+ tier. Honestly, he could maybe be above Oni even. Yeah, I'll put him above Oni actually. Yeah, I think Oni like at least. You can like outplay. I think you can outplay Oni probably easier and safer than you could Pyramid Head. Yeah, Pyramid Head like at any point can like you get a couple hits at crucial moments, bro. The survivor team is just fucking dead. Like they just die. It's crazy. I think he's a little bit. It's close, but I think putting him above is fine. Blight's S tier. Blight you can definitely argue is maybe the best killer in the game. Nurse Blight. I don't know. This is tough. You can make an argument for him being best or not. I don't know. I'll put him here for now while I talk it over. Blight, insanely mobile, right? He has 5 rushes that are really, really fast. He gets across the map like almost instantly. Between the 5 rushes, you can usually like, you can either you can try to like outplay pallets by just bouncing around and using your rushes and like, people call it bump logic, which is basically like your ability to like use one dash to set yourself up for the next one, to maybe set yourself up for the next one. You can usually pinball your way into getting a hit in most scenarios, and if you can't, then you can just break the pallet. Like literally, like dude, my least favorite thing in all of DBD is probably Blights that run brutal strength, because they'll literally just zone, kick the pallet, and then they'll rush after you and then hit you before you make it to the next one, and it's so frustrating. There's almost like nothing you can do about it. It's so fucking annoying, dude. But it is a thing you can do with Blight, and it's fucking insane. And even ones that have good bump logic are super scary, right? Like you, again, kind of like every other killer, there is obviously a like safe play you can do that makes it a little bit easier to stay alive against them. But even then, good Blights will find ways to play around that. And like trying to stay alive for a long period of time against a good Blight is fucking hard. And on top of the fact that he has the insane amount of mobility that he has, makes him just nuts. Like just very consistently fast hits, insanely mobile. Like for the record, like Nurse gets hits. Like I would argue Nurse consistently is going to be hitting you in like, I don't know. Like if they're within blink range, like you're probably getting hit in either the next 5 seconds or the next 15. Like that's it. Like right, it's either going to be the next set of blinks or the set after that. Like you're hit in either 5 or 15. Blight, it's like you could take him on like a 45-second chase, but there's still a pretty decent chance that you're getting hit in the next like 15 seconds. You know what I mean? But like just that like Nurse just being like a little bit faster on average chases does make her possibly better, even though she doesn't have the mobility. But it's really close. It's really, really close, honestly. It's like these two are so fucking close. I'm trying to think of like maps, right? Like Blight on like certain indoor maps sounds awful. Like a Blight on like Larry's sounds miserable. But then again, Nurse on Larry sounds miserable too. I think Nurse suffers a lot from big maps though. Like if you play on like a really huge map, that makes Nurse suffer a lot, whereas Blight I think doesn't suffer a lot. Oh, brother. I don't know, dude. I don't know. I think I'm going to put Blight above Nurse, but it's like just barely. I think Billy is definitely number 3, but these two are like, oh God, dude, they're so, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm going to put Blight here, but it's really hard. He's mobile. He's deadly. I think he's too good. I think he's just so fucking nuts. I think he belongs in S tier. I think that's fine. He's also very consistent. That's another thing. Like Billy, like the thing about Billy is like Billy's got mobility and lethality too, but Billy is like a little bit more like risky in like a lot of things you gotta do, whereas Blight is like less risky. So yeah, just way too strong for his like level of mobility. Very, very good. Twins. Oh, I've been kind of dreading getting to twins, honestly. Now, how do I base this though? Do I base this off of their current bugginess? Because like their current bugginess makes them fucking stupid. You know what I mean? Like literally their bugginess makes me feel like I want to put them in S tier. I don't know if you guys know. Okay, so like let me explain. Like the way the Twins works is that if Victor pounces on a, okay, I'll explain everything about their kit. Let me just rant. Okay, I'm gonna put them in like A+ for now while I rant. Okay. Twins is a killer where basically you're relying on getting a bunch of people injured and then snowballing with Victor, right? Victor is like Charlotte is just a 4.6 killer with no chase power, so you're pretty weak. Victor is this like little insane fucking little bastard that runs around and he has like a leap that goes over pallets and windows and he's really fast and essentially a good Twins player, a good killer player controlling Victor is guaranteed to hit you. Like you can't really avoid a hit from Victor. He's gonna damage you no matter what. Sometimes you could buy a little bit of time, but he's gonna damage you, right? So, and the idea behind this is that when a survivor's healthy, Victor latches on, and then it kicks you back to Charlotte, and then that survivor basically has Victor on their back for a while, and the survivor can choose to like crush Victor, and you know like get rid of him, or they can just hold on to him for a while, right? Which kind of keeps you stuck on Charlotte and makes you not able to use Victor again for like a while, right? I think it takes like 30 seconds. I think after like 30 seconds, I think it is, you can manually recall Victor and bring him back to you. I think it puts him on cooldown actually. You could recall him and then it goes on like a 10-second cooldown or something. So it's usually like 45 seconds or something like that, I think. I don't know the exact time. It's something like that. Like basically if Victor pounces on a healthy survivor, you can deny the killer from using Victor for like 45 seconds or something ish. Those numbers might not be right, but you know what I mean. Because also, if people are injured, what happens is Victor downs them and doesn't latch on, and you can keep running around. So the basic idea behind Twins play is typically like get people injured and then send Victor after them, and then get a bunch of hits with Victor, right? Like get it down, go find someone else, get it down, go find someone else, get it down. Like that's basically how you snowball with Twins, is getting people injured and then taking advantage of the fact that like injured people getting hit doesn't kick you back to Charlotte, right? Now the thing about this is like, really good teams can make Twins struggle a bit because they can just always be full health, right? They can like heal each other often. That like there's honestly high level Twins play is fucking fascinating. It's so cool, dude. It's so interesting because it's all about like the buddy system. Like you get people that buddy up, and like if Victor's chasing an injured survivor, they can like sit in a corner, and then the full health person can just body block the corner, and Victor literally can't pounce a person in the corner. So you can basically like body block and take hits and continuously like make sure you're healing each other and keeping healthy people against Victor to make sure that he struggles to get downs. It's really fascinating seeing good teams play against Twins. Honestly, it's super interesting and super cool to see. But the thing about it is like the counterplay is based around the fact that a healthy survivor taking Victor can basically deny Victor for like 45 seconds. But the problem is that there's currently a bug where sometimes, even after Victor latches onto a healthy survivor, Twins can just instantly recall him. I don't fucking know. It's so weird because that's like very fundamental to her counterplay, right? Like that is like the most fundamental thing is that like, oh, I take this Victor while healthy, I can deny this power for a while. And that just like, the bug just completely destroys her counterplay. It's fucking wild, bro. I honestly, if we're saying with that bug, I'm honestly saying she's S tier. Like unironically, I think if that bug like comes into play, she's literally S tier. How the fuck are you supposed to stop her from snowballing? How do you stop her from snowballing when she gets guaranteed damage, instantly recalls, guaranteed damage? Like what the fuck? Like what? That's crazy. But that being said, if that bug isn't in play, like say that bug is fixed, or maybe if it doesn't, I don't even know what causes it. It's like sometimes happens and sometimes it doesn't. Like say you have a whole game where that bug never happens. I think she's A+. I think she's like top. She's definitely above Oni and Pyramid Head, that's for sure. Is she above Spirit? This is really hard. She's one of these two. If that bug doesn't come into play, she's one of these two for sure. She has really good macro play, right? Like you could hold areas of the map really well with her because of the fact that you can like for instance, if you're holding a 3-gen, you can like park Charlotte at the 3-gen and send Victor out across the map. And then at any point you can switch back to Charlotte to like check on your gens, right? Like her macro play is incredible. Her snowball is incredible. You have to play so like disciplined against her or else she'll pop off and snowball. That being said, like I've seen games where like survivors play really properly and she gets like almost 0 hooks. Like that's possible, but it's really, really hard. She also, you know what? I'm going to put her below Spirit because I think the only reason I'm putting her below Spirit is that she does get ridiculously hard countered by certain perks. Like they're not super common perks, but you know, you go against like power struggle flip-flop gamers and like you're like almost fucked unless you just like bleed them all out. You know what I mean? But what if they have power struggle flip flop and then like unbreakable or like boon exponential or something, right? There's so many perks that like hurt her power a lot because her power is so reliant on like slugging and shit that like things like boon exponential, unbreakable, even like tenacity is like a soft counter. Things like power struggle flip flop. There's a lot of perks like that that can be really, really rough for her. So also reset perks. Like, I mean, perks like circle of healing are insane too. Like Survivor's ability to heal faster is pretty insane as well. Things like Resurgence getting buffed recently is pretty good because a lot of people have been running that, which also hurts her a lot as well. So I think just because of like how hard she gets hit by perks, I feel like I'm gonna put her a little bit below Spirit, but I do think she's above Pyramid Head and Oni, and I think she's definitely like borderline top 5, top 6-ish killers, right? There's another killer that I'm gonna put in this area, but I think outside of them, she's like right there. She's like top 5 or 6-ish. She's very, very, very good. And again, with that bug, like if that bug comes into play, she's literally S tier in my opinion. Like that bug is fucking absurd. So yeah, just super snowbally, super hard to deal with. The fact that she gets guaranteed damage to Victor is just nuts. She's just really, really good. Just extremely strong. The Trickster, the old Dickster. Where do I put Trickster? I think Trickster to me belongs in... Ooh, you guys might hate me for this one. Ooh, this one might be a hot take. Ooh, this one might be real spicy. Ooh, this one might be real spicy. Ooh, it's gonna be spicy. Ooh, you guys ready? It's gonna be spicy. B+. It's gonna be B+. I think Trickster deserves B+. I think he's nuts. I think he's very good. I think he's better than Huntress. Against like really, really good players. I think he's better than Huntress. I think he's solid. Okay, chat saying that's not that spicy. Whatever, okay? Look, I know a lot of people put him in like C tier, okay? I'll say this much. If you guys want to watch an insane Trickster and maybe have your mind changed about how strong Trickster is, okay, if this is going on YouTube, and as long as I remember, if I forget, just leave a comment and I'll fix it. I will leave a link to Wasik, his stream, and also his YouTube. And for the people that are here live, somebody should link Wasik in chat, like his YouTube or his Twitch. Watch Wasik play. I might not even be saying his name right. I think he's Polish, so I don't think it's Wasik. I think it's like Wachik or something. That motherfucker, like watching someone like him play Trickster is like, bro, it's disgusting. Like it is so gross. I think yeah, it's the guy that ended Hen Streak. Yeah, I think the guy, I think Trickster when played at his actual highest level is so disgusting. Like he's not like, again, he's not like this level of disgusting. He's not like A+ S tier, but he is definitely not in the C tiers, bro. There's no way. Like you almost can't play, like you can like pre-throw some loops and force him to kick basically, but there's so many loops that he just shuts down entirely and gets like guaranteed hits. His like, again, his hook camping potential is absurd. Like if he catches you remotely going for an unhook at all and catches you out in position like that, he'll just snowball the whole game like that. Again, that's kind of what happened to Hens whenever he lost his streak, was basically that exact thing I'm saying. Like he just is he's very deadly, and he also, again, puts you in these uncomfortable positions where like if you fuck up even a little bit, he just snowballs like mad, and then all of a sudden you're just fucking dead. Like it's so crazy. So yeah, he's absolutely absurd when in the hands of like good players. I mean, absolutely absurd, and I feel like I'm saying absolutely absurd. It makes it sound like I'm saying he's like S tier. He's more absurd than I think people give him credit for. I think he gets hits way more consistently than Huntress, right? Like playing Huntress against good players, you can't really like force damage. Like you can try, but you have like your like slow wind up hatchet throw, and like if the survivors are good with positioning, they can usually avoid that. Tricksters like if you're just landing like 1 or 2 daggers here and there, and again, if you watch good Trickster players, you'll see like they'll literally just go like 1 2 1 2 1 2. You know what I mean? Like they'll just do like 2 daggers here and there as you're looping, and then like next thing you know you're injured, and the next thing you know you're injured with like 6 daggers in you, and you're like, what the fuck is happening? Holy shit, you know? Like it's crazy. So I think he creates damage much more consistently than Huntress. He's also 4.6 now, which makes him more mobile and like easier to get around the map, right? Which is also great. I just think he's really good. I think he's very lethal. I think unhooks are horribly scary against him. The only reason why he's not like A tier is because, again, like a lot of the other killers in the B+ tier, again, kind of similar to like Clown in a way, right? You can play really safe against them, and for instance, if you're making it a point to go to like high wall loops, and like if you just pre-drop pallets and kind of like force him to kick, you can have a decent extended chase with him, but doing so, you basically have to use like all the resources, and even then he'll probably still be able to down you eventually, right? Like you can't really take him. I would argue you can take Clown on a longer chase than like you could Trickster, like a good Trickster. Like there's no way. Like he's gonna kill you, and you got to play like really safe, and even then he'll probably still be able to kill you. Like it's really hard. It's really, really hard. So yeah, I just think he's pretty solid at creating damage, very snowbally, unhooking's terrifying. B+. I'm pretty confident in that. That might be a hot take, but I don't care. I'm confident in it. Speaking of hot takes, I think Nemesis might also be a hot take too. A lot of people have been rating Nemesis really high, and I just don't know if I agree with people's high ratings of him. I think he is B-. Where he is in this tier, I don't know. I think I can maybe put him above Huntress. I'll put him above Huntress, but I think he's like top of B-. He's not amazing, but he's not bad, right? They did buff him a while back, and now his tier 3 gives his tentacle like even longer range, and honestly, the range is kind of crazy. And there's also like strafe teching, which also is really nice as well. That makes him really good. Like being able to like strafe tech around a corner with your whip is really good. And again, I'll just explain that real quick, just in case if anyone's like new watching and they're like, "What the fuck is strafe teching? What are you saying?" Basically, Nemesis has this thing where like if you like throw out your whip. Like literally, even if you're facing a wall, you can throw out your whip against the wall, and as long as you're strafing like to the side, like the tentacle will like linger, and the hitbox will follow you as you strafe. So essentially, if someone's like looping around in objects, like you can basically like whip early and strafe into them, and it'll still hit them. That being said, good Striver players know about strafe tech, and they'll like flare it. I just realized we were talking earlier about terminology, and now I'm realizing how much dumb DVD terminology I use. Flaring means dodging to the side. Like, for instance, if I'm coming around the corner and I'm trying to like push my hitbox into you, if the survivor realizes I'm going to do that and just goes further away from the side of the corner I'm coming around, you can basically avoid it, right? Like, he's not like guaranteed hits, right? Like, first off, you got to hit somebody initially with your tentacle to even prime them to take damage, and then even then you have to then follow it up, and even then the hits aren't guaranteed. But he still does. He shuts down pallets pretty well, right? He shuts down pallets and windows pretty well with his whip. It's like a good range attack that does damage. He can put you in a lot of weird scenarios where you have to like kind of juke him and get lucky. The zombies, honestly, the zombies are a fucking menace, bro. I don't know if they buffed zombies recently or what, but I swear every time I play against Nemi, the zombies will not leave me the fuck alone. Like no matter what, I'm like on a gen, zombie shows up. I'm like, God damn it. I run across the map, do a different gen, zombie shows up. I'm like, dude, what the fuck? Like, what's going on? Can I do anything? Like, can I be productive? What's going on here? I don't know if it's just me. I feel like zombies are annoying as hell. And I don't know if they got buffed in terms of like their pathing or what, but like the zombies honestly add a lot to his kit too, because a zombie interrupting a gen at like a really crucial moment can honestly be a game changer. But outside of the zombie RNG, I feel like his actual chase kit is like right around here. Like it's not insane. It's not like god tier. It's probably a little bit better than Demo, and more consistent than Huntress. I don't know if I'd say it's better than Huntress, but it's probably more consistent than Huntress at least. I wouldn't say it's better than these B+ killers, though. I feel like it's not quite that level. He's like a good B-. Solid, not amazing, solid. Just very, very solid chase killer. No, like, mobility or anything. Just zombies that are annoying. Solid chase. That's basically it. All right, Pinhead's up next. Pinhead's a weird one. His power is, like, okay in chase, but it has a lot of, like, dumb RNG. He's not... Okay, this is actually one of my most frustrating killers to play, because... when you hit someone with a chain, it'll spawn 2 more chains in random places. And I swear, bro, the amount of times that I hit someone with a chain and then the other 2 will spawn like conveniently behind an environmental object, and then they just strafe a little bit and break all their chains instantly, drives me insane. I mean, I feel like I'm just ranting about this now, but I don't even care. It pisses me off. I do feel like the whole like box adding additional pressure is really good. Pinheads that are like good with box with like bots logic is terrifying too, because again, most people probably know this, but just for the sake of making this as digestible as I can for everybody, there is like logic behind where the box spawns, and like if you know how that logic works, it's basically based on your position as well as the position of the survivors. And if you know how that logic works, really good pinheads, especially if you're snowballing and you know where all the survivors are, like if you have the info where every survivor is, even like mid-game, you can have an idea of where the box is going to be and kind of like make it a point to like go there or pressure that way. And chain hunts are nuts, man. Like when the chain hunt's up, it's rough. You can't do gens. Chases are like almost impossible. Like a really good pinhead that gets snowballing can be terrifying. That being said, still pretty loopable, right? Like at the end of the day, like you're still pretty loopable. Like you kind of have like a clown-esque chase power where like you slow people down and you can force like slow vaults. But at the end of the day, if you're like pre-throwing pallets and playing safe against them, a lot of times you still can get run for quite a long time. The perk Fixated completely fucking annihilates his killer and basically makes his power not exist, which is interesting. And probably shouldn't be a thing. But luckily, Fixated is not like a super meta perk, because if it was, this motherfucker would be like D tier, honestly. But yeah, I think he's probably like, oh man, Pinhead. I think he's top of B minus. I think is where he is. I think he's. I would say he's a little bit more consistent to me than like Nemi, maybe. Oh man, I don't know. Maybe below Nemi. I think he's around Nemi level strength. Is what I think. Like if I think of another killer around, like if I'm trying to think of like, okay, who's like the same level as Pinhead, I feel like Nemi's the first one that comes to mind. Like decently deadly, but you can still play safe against them pretty easily. Does have some like macro pressure, right? Like Nemi has the zombies, Pinhead has the box. I do think if either one of these starts snowballing, it can be a little bit rough to come back from, but not like super rough. Yeah, I think B minus is probably, I think that seems right. Again, I don't know. We'll come back and I'll reassess if I need to, but he just still is pretty loopable. And I think survivors that are just doing a good job of keeping up with the box as much as they can and just looping wisely, that's really all you have, right? You have like your little bit of anti-loop and then you have the box pressure. That's it. Other than that, you're just doing your best to outdo them. And I just don't think it's enough to really warrant being higher than this. Man, I have 3 M1 killers above these fucking... That's weird. This tier list looks weird. I feel like already looking at this, I'm feeling like I don't know how I feel about it, but I'm just going to keep it going. Fuck it. Artist. Artist has lost some favor with people lately. I've been seeing people put Artist in like really low tiers lately. It's weird. Like I've been seeing other people make tier lists and they'll put her in like fucking B tiers and shit. I think she's A minus. Maybe even A plus. Maybe. No. She's at least A minus. Her zoning is so insane, right? She can put down birds on pallets and windows, and then if you try to go through them or throw them or go on the other side of them, she can damage you. Even if she doesn't use it to zone pallets and windows, she can do the old hit you with one bird, and then you got to like, you know, de-swarm yourself or whatever it is, like cleanse yourself of birds. And then during that, she can set up 1 or 2 birds, you know, to try to like snipe you and do damage. And also if she's chasing you, she'll probably force you into like using pallets or vaulting windows, which will make you have to reset your crows, right? So like trying to survive and chase against a good artist is fucking difficult, bro. It's terrifying. Like good artist players are brutally hard to play against and chase. And honestly, her area control is nuts too, right? Like the fact that you can send birds to gens to get info and also pressure, like obviously like survivors have caught on a little bit to the fact that like jumping in lockers will cleanse the birds instantly. So like if you send a crow across the map and get someone on a gen, that person will probably just hop in a locker and hop out, right? But even that, like if you're like say you're like patrolling a hook and you're playing kind of campy, right? Like if you're playing to win and you're playing kind of campy, even just forcing someone to get off a gen and hop in a locker over and over again is still time off gens, right? Like you're still making them waste time. And God forbid the survivor gets that annoying ass bug where when you let go of a gen, you get a skill check and it blows up in your face. Like, dude, that's like genuine regression, right? Like, you might as well be running fucking eruption at that point. Like, Jesus Christ. But honestly, yeah, I think her like area control is really solid in terms of like holding down an area with her birds and like getting info. I think her chase is very, very solid, like very above average. I think, like, I would say like Slinger's chase is like more directly deadly, but I feel like she just has so much more in terms of area control and everything. The one thing I will say about her that is making me not want to put her in A+. I feel like I would put her in A+, except for the fact that she gets hard countered by like elevation. Like any map that has elevation. Like if you play her on like Pale Rose, right? Like the swamp map, bruh. Like half the map is like up on a hill and the other half's like lower. So like if you're on like the lower end and they're doing a gen on the top end, you literally can't even hit them with birds or vice versa, right? Like it's just like maps with like goofy ass elevation make this killer fucking miserable. And unfortunately there is a good bit of maps with like elevation. Because honestly, even if the map doesn't have a ton of elevation like Swamp does, I mean even just having gens that spawn up high, right? Like maps like Hawkins. Like I've gotten spawns of Hawkins where like there's obviously the 2 up high gens on each side, but even like the gens like outside of the 2 guaranteed ones, sometimes you'll get ones that are like up on like the catwalks, right? And you'll have like half of them are on the catwalks, half of them are on the ground, then you have others that are really high up, and it's just like really awkward to actually use your crows on those gens in any significant way. And you're just like, that's like half your power, not half, but that's like a big chunk of your power basically made useless, right? Which sucks. So I think because of that like kind of map dependence, I think I gotta put her in A-. But honestly, I think, yeah, better than Plague, better than, I would say here, yeah, better than Plague, better than Slinger, I'd say. Yeah, like top of A- for now, I would say is a good spot for her. I don't know why. It's definitely possible that I'm missing something here because I've been seeing so many people lately like put artists like lower than A tier and shit. I don't like people that I usually agree with on opinions. Like people who have opinions that I trust, I've been seeing put her lower. So it's possible that there's something I'm missing here. But as far as my current brain thinks, A- feels really good for me. Onryo is pretty dog shit now. Which like thank fuck. She had that like super annoying kit for a while where she just like was getting free fucking condemn kills and it was stupid as fuck. And they like nerfed that, thank the Lord. And now it's like, if you get like a really stupid map like Midwich or something, she can be really deadly. But outside of like annoying shit like Midwich, on most other maps, she's just kind of a pushover, honestly. Well, I do gotta remember, they did make Reiko's Watch, or however you say it, slightly base kit. I do think, okay, to her credit, let me just think out loud a little bit. Her like invisibility works in a weird way, right? Because while she's demanifested and for a little bit after she manifests, she like blinks in and out of invisibility. And like a big thing that like people learned early on, and it's slowly spread, and I think pretty much everyone knows it now, but basically when you're playing killer, like you can see your hands, right? You can see your weapon or whatever. And your actual hands or whatever you see on your screen, when they're invisible is when you're actually invisible, like to the survivor. So it's really interesting in that way. So you can literally know when you're invisible, and you can time like your double backs, and you can time your movement around when you're invisible. And honestly, you can really throw a lot of survivors off guard if you're really good at that. I think like there's a huge difference between really good Onryo players and like any random Onryo player, right? And I do think she does need some credit for that. Like good Onryo players will definitely catch you off guard a lot. And I think saying like, oh, she's just an M1 killer or whatever in Chase is like way wrong. I think there's a lot of potential options for like Chase that can catch people off guard. And I do think Condemn is like at least, okay, if it's not like a, I'm not like, okay, I think good survivors shouldn't really be getting condemned killed very often, but I do think it's at least a threat to the point where the survivors have to deal with it at some point, right? Like if you're just teleporting a lot and spreading stacks a lot, they at least have to at some point take a trip across the map and like reset their condemn at some point, or else they're going to get cucked by it, right? And just the teleporting being good mobility in general, plus the stealth, like she does have a good bit in her kit, even though she's still kind of dookie. Is she as bad as the C- killers? I don't think I could put her in the C-. I think I got to put her in C+. Like the bottom of C+, but C+. Like again, I think there is a lot of little mind game things that she can do. You can definitely catch people out of position and get some weird plays. The mobility is nice. The condemn is like a little bit of extra slowdown. Who else is here? Like, yeah, Pig, right? Yeah, she's like close to Pig. Yeah, I'd say she's close to Pig in power. I don't think she's as bad as these guys. Yeah, I think this is good. The bottom of C+, I think, is fine for me. I don't think she's anywhere near as good as these guys. Yeah, this is good. Yeah, like bottom of C+. Again, can be threatening for sure, but I think if you play safe and you don't fuck up a survivor, you can still loop her easily. Her condemn shouldn't be a threat if you know what you're doing. Just turn off TVs before you do them. But there is like, again, I do respect the fuck out of Onryo players that really learn her kit, because there is a lot of weird little things you can do with her that most people don't really know about, or most people don't utilize. It's kind of like Wraith, right? I said about this in the Wraith kit, or sorry, in the Wraith section, where I think watching good Wraith players is like a whole different world. I think the same thing about Onryo. Like watching or playing against them is like a whole different world. It's like you see weird shit that you've never seen before, and I think it's really cool. So C+, that's fine with me. Dredge. I'm so sorry, Dredge. I'm so sorry. This killer is like, he's cool. Like, I like his design. You know, he's neat. He's cool. But God, is he fucking bad. God, is he fucking awful, dude. This killer sucks. Like, hypothetically, if you can guarantee that every single map you play is Midwich Elementary School, then he would probably be like, you know, like A+ maybe, right? If you could guarantee that you're on Midwich every single time. But unfortunately, you can't. And unfortunately, you have to play on other maps. So therefore, he's awful. He's kind of awful. I feel like his little like remnant like leaving thing that you have to like try to play tiles is basically useless unless you're at a tile that's completely isolated, right? Like if they're like zoned like towards edge map and the tile is completely isolated, then you can maybe try to do something with it. But outside of that, it's like pretty useless. It's useless against good players, I should say. Like, I know some people are going to be like, but OhTofu, I mind gamed a Meg player in my pub game with it, so therefore it's not useless. Like, obviously, like, people are going to be doofy and fall for random. I'm against, like, really good high-tier players. That shit is, like, unless you're at, like, an isolated tile that you can't connect to anything else at all, his power is completely, like, it's like a nothing chase power. Like, it's basically not a chase power. What he does have, though, is really good mobility. Like, very, very good mobility, right? Can teleport to any locker on the map pretty quickly too. They buffed that a few patches ago, where now he teleports faster, which is nice. Also, Nightfall is really interesting. Nightfall can get scary. Like, if you have a bunch of people injured and he has Nightfall up, he can just teleport around the map super fast. He gets Killer Instinct if you're anywhere near the locker he teleports to, and he can definitely snowball pretty nuts if you get to that position. But the problem is getting to that position against good players is so fucking hard, because like every hit is such a struggle, because you're basically just a no power killer in chase outside of like certain palettes, right? These like very specific palettes. Outside of like very specific palettes, you're basically just an M1 killer in chase. And also with all the healing perks that exist right now, right? Between like Botany Knowledge and We'll Make It and Resurgence and, you know, Circle of Healing and all the thing, people having med kits in every game. Like, between all the healing things that exist too, it's just so hard to keep people injured to actually snowball in any way. And if you're trying to just like tunnel someone, it's not going to work either. He's so bad, bro. He's so bad. Like, honestly, I unironically am putting him in D tier with Myers. I really am. He's so bad. I'll put him above Myers at least, but he's really fucking bad, bro. Dredge is a terrible killer. Like, he is an absolutely terrible killer. Some people claim that he's like better, good. People are out of their mind saying he's good. He's not good at all. Like, he's pretty fucking awful. Up next is Wesker. What do I do with him? Wesker, I've always considered Wesker to be like low A tier. But lately I've been thinking a little bit more about putting him in like high B tier. But now I gotta think. Let me like look at the other, like, again, am I putting him with Wraith, Freddy, and Clown? Wesker? With those guys? No, he's low A. I don't care what anyone says. He's low A. Fuck you guys. He's definitely low A. Yeah, I think he's not like, well, he might even be better than Slinger, to be honest with you. Like, he's solid, dude. He's solid. I think Wesker players that really like are comfortable with his dashes and know how to set shit up can really force a lot of 50-50s, right? Like, you can get put in a lot of positions where even at like pallets that are pretty strong, he can like combo dashes in a way where you like kind of have to like juke it essentially, or else you get hit. He has a lot of like slow down with the whole, like, you know, you have to use sprays around the map or whatever after, or else you get hit with that big hinder. The information you get from people spraying is nice too. Like, all that little passive stuff going on is really, really nice. His dash is decent even just for mobility around the map, which is kind of cool. The main thing he suffers from is just that his cooldown is like decently long, right? So like, for instance, if you go for a double dash and you miss it, you're kind of like just M1 killer for a good, like, I don't even know what it is, like 8 or 10 seconds. And if that happens like a couple times in a row, then it starts to feel kind of bad, you know? Like, you can start to like lose a lot of like pressure and snowballing. But again, like a Wesker that is able to like land dashes, and again, kind of like Blight, you get a lot of people that play Wesker where they just run brutal strength, zone kick, and then use their dash to get you to get you between tiles, which also works pretty well a lot of the time. Like, that's also a pretty good way to play him. I think he has a lot of potential to create pressure, way more potential to create pressure than I think like the killers in B+ tier. I think maybe even a little bit, he might be a little bit safer to me than Slinger, because at least he's got like mobility and Slinger doesn't. But I think like Plague is probably going to be a little bit more consistent than him, I think. Like, I think right here feels like the perfect spot for me. Good, solid, fun killer, though. I think like the double dash, like, you know, geometry gaming is fucking cool, and I really like the killer. I think he's super fun. Also, that like vaulting pallets and windows with his power, by the way, just in case anyone doesn't know, is basically useless against good players that know the timing. This is funny because I think earlier today, when I'm recording this, I failed this, so, you know, maybe I don't count as good players here, but good players that know how to time the like revault. Basically, if you vault a pallet, like, even if there's like a pallet that's like a one-way pallet and you vault it and you're like, haha, I should get damage now, the survivor can literally just like run behind you and vault it as long as they time it correctly, and there's nothing you can do about it. So like, you can't really use his like power to vault pallets and windows in any kind of effective way against good players, because they'll just revault it and then you're fucked. So yeah, it's mostly just about like figuring out what tiles you could use your power at, kicking every other pallet, and then trying to just snowball as hard as you can, essentially. But yeah, I mean, he definitely can create damage pretty well. He's a very straightforward killer. Just 2 dashes, can create pressure pretty well. Solid killer. Just very, very solid killer. Definitely on the higher end. Oh, the Knight. The Knight. Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. The Knight is not tragically, you know? I gotta be honest. Knight is... What just happened to him? Knight's probably one of my least favorite killers in terms of design. Oh, Zombie Pixie's in my chat. Uh-oh. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Pixie. I'm sorry. I'm very, very sorry. Knight's probably my... I gotta say it anyway. I'm sorry. I don't care. I'm sorry. I gotta say it. Knight's probably my least favorite killer in terms of design in this whole game. I do feel like it's gotten to a point in the game where I don't really like hate him as much as I used to, but I still think, generally speaking, in terms of killer design, I feel like he's probably the worst one they've ever made. Because basically, again, like the way his kit works is you basically spawn an AI guard that has like a radius of detecting somebody. When they detect that person, the AI chases them for like a set amount of time, and essentially the killer power comes down to making an AI guard chase somebody, and then you pincer attack the person with the guard and yourself. And it's basically like guaranteed damage on people, but it just takes a long time. Like essentially, here's how games go against people that are smart with Knight, right? Like with and against Knight. The Knight finds somebody. You set yourself up in a position where you're like zoning them, where you basically send a guard one way and you're the other way. So they either have to run into you and get hit, or they run into your guard and get chased by them. Once the guard chases them, they just bolt across the map. They just hold W. Like pretty much the only thing you could do, is hold W across the map and make the, because you're pretty much guaranteed to get hit if the Knight player is smart. But like the best thing to do with Survivor is just make it take as long as possible, right? Like if you just hold W across the map, you can literally get to the whole other side of the map before you're hit. So it'll take like 30 seconds for the killer to follow you the whole way over, hit you, spawn another Knight. Same thing, but like every download is going to take like a minute, which is just brutal. Like that's way too long, right? Like that's long enough that a lot of gens get done. So he's weird because he gets guaranteed hits, which like guaranteed hits sounds like it's like right, like all the top tier killers are like super strong because like again Twins is like up here because Victor's guaranteed hits, right? Like guaranteed hits is really strong overall. It's just that it takes so fucking long. It's like the doctor problem, but way worse, right? It just takes so long to get them. And again, if you get some like doofy survivors that like, also for the record, survivors should never be getting hit by guards without the Knight pressuring them too. Because that's a whole other thing I hear a lot about this killer too. A lot of people will tell me that this killer is stronger than he is because they're like, oh yeah, you could just like put an assassin on somebody and then he'll just kill them and there's nothing they can do about it. Like, if you're not pressuring the survivor with the guard, they shouldn't be getting hit. Like they will sometimes because people, you know, just do doofy stuff sometimes, but like a good survivor should never be just getting hit from a solo guard. Like it should, but if the guard and the Knights, you know, both focusing on the same player, they're basically guaranteed it's just going to take a long time. That being said, you still do get guaranteed hits even if it takes a while, so there is still some guaranteed pressure. The one thing the Knight also does have going for them is that they do a good job of like area control, right? Like for instance, if you hook somebody and you want to like camp that hook, you can like send your guards to gens to either like kick those gens or like chase somebody there for a set amount of time, which can kind of help you like hold gens while also camping hooks, which can be pretty strong, like macro wise. Just the information you can get from the guards is kind of nice. Also, like in chase, I think a very underrated thing is just using Carnifex. Like there's 3 guards, right? I mean, I'm not going to cover everything, but Carnifex is like the main guard that you use to break pallets because he insta breaks. I usually call it Spirit Fury in a bottle because it's basically what it feels like. Like someone throws a pallet in front of you, and if you just insta send Carnifex and break it, they get like no distance. Like they throw the pallet and it's already like broke by the time they're like done with the animation, and then you're just right on their ass. Like you can basically force some hits like that. Not force some hits, but get close to forcing some hits like that. But it's a little bit more, there's a little bit more details than that, but I don't want to get into it. But he can be pretty strong with just like annihilating pallets and chase, but not strong enough to like necessarily like get fast downs, right? Like it's decent, but you're not going to like insta kill anybody, at least good players. You're not going to be insta killing good players. You're still going to get ran for a while, right? So, man, I think Knight goes in. I'm looking at all the other killers right now. He goes in C- for sure. Where in C-? Above Trapper for sure. Above Hag. Above Legion? I think Legion, I've hit the point where I'm confused. It's Legion. Like I feel like I always get to a killer where I'm like, better than this, and I get to a killer where I'm like, I don't know. Legion's the killer, I don't know. Legion and Knight are close. I think I'd put Knight a little bit above Legion, but only a little bit, honestly. I do think people underestimate Legion a bit, but I do think Knight is a little bit above. Not Onryo? No, I don't think better than Onryo, bro. I think this is good. Yeah, I think top is C-, yeah. And also, just for the record, just to clarify what I said earlier about hating Knight's design, I just think the idea of an AI guard chasing someone and then a human guard pincer attacking and leaving the survivor with no options is just the worst game design decision I think I've ever seen in a game. Like, I don't knock behavior. Like I usually try to defend behavior on most things, right? Like I got their back when it comes to most things. I think Knight's design was the biggest flop ever, and I think they should have literally deleted that shit in the fucking drawing board stage because I think that is wild, bro. Like the complete like taking away options from the survivor side is just so silly, and I hate it so much. That being said, you can manipulate guards in really goofy ways. And if you guys want to see a video on how to manipulate guards in really goofy ways, boy, do I have the video for you. It's on my YouTube channel. If you're watching this live, you can type !guards in chat. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll probably link it down below. So yeah, you can manipulate guards in really dumb ways, but good knight players will still hit you anyway, right? Like you can throw off bad knight players, but good knight players are still going to fuck you. So like there's not really much you can do. So yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. Oh shit, I forgot. Wait, I completely forgot about this. Skull Merchant, do I make a new tier for Skull Merchant? No, I'm just going to put her at the bottom. I'm too lazy. We already have way too many tiers. If I wasn't lazy, I would put like a F minus tier and I would put Skull Merchant in it. They really gutted this killer. Like they really did. Like they hit her hard, bro. She like, I don't know what the fuck the point of her is now. Like she presses M2 to get stealth for a little bit of time. Trying to get 3 scans on a survivor is like, is it even fucking possible? I feel like if it is possible, it only happens after you've already been looped for like a minute anyway. So like at that point, who cares? The game's already probably over. This killer is horrible right now. Like actually, like this might be one of the worst killers we've ever had in this entire game. I think the only killer that maybe has ever been weaker than this is maybe Release Hag. And if you know anything about Release Hag, then you'll probably laugh because Release Hag was absurdly bad. But outside of Release Hag, I don't think we maybe have ever had a weaker killer than Skull Merchant. She is really, really fucking bad. Like really, really, really bad. So yeah, there's not really much to say here, man. Like she just has nothing in her kit. Like there's nothing to do. You're just standard chase killer. Your drones can eventually do damage if you're incredibly lucky, but it's one scan line that rotates slowly in the very obvious mode. There's no hiding your lines anymore. I don't know what to say about it. There's nothing else to say. They just nerfed the fuck out of her, and she's super bad now. Again, some people are gonna come in and hit me with some anecdotal shit where they're like, I actually queued up a Skull Merchant and got 5 4Ks in a row. Like, obviously, if you're playing against a bunch of Meg players in public matches, you can do whatever the fuck you want. I know, all right? You can play fucking Perkless Myers with your hands tied behind your back and probably peck your fucking keyboard into winning against certain survivors. I know, okay? There's a lot of bad survivors out there, okay? I know. But she's still horrible, all right? No matter what experiences people talk about, she's fucking horrible, all right? She's a horrible, horrible killer right now. She's easily the worst, easily one of the worst we've ever had. And I think I'll just stop shitting on her. FYI, any Skull Merchant lovers out there that are probably like, oh God, stop daggering my heart. I stopped hating Skull Merchant after her first rework. I think even the most recent Skull Merchant before she got nerfed, I didn't even mind her. I liked her. I feel like Skull Merchant's not as bad as everyone's been making her out to be, so don't hate me, okay? I don't mind the killer. I feel bad that she got gutted. Anyway, Singularity's up next. Singularity, I've been seeing this motherfucker get put really high in other people's tier lists too, which is interesting. I think Singularity's really good, especially since his buffs. He got a bunch of these little buffs that like didn't seem like much until you actually started playing around him. He like comes in and out of his pods faster. He can like teleport a little bit quicker. Like all of his like cooldowns and stuff are like just a little bit quicker, and it makes him like really smooth. And I feel like he just plays really smooth and fast. And he's just so like, I mean, he's such a good like gen defense killer, dude. Like it's so nuts. I just like the stuff I've seen good Singularity players do is just fucking absurd. Like he's such an insane killer. One of the hardest to play, but so strong. The main thing that makes me kind of take a few notches off of Singularity is that there are a couple maps where he is really bad. Like Singularity on a map like Larry's is like, ugh, brother, like holy Christ, dude. Like he is not very good on that map at all. Like terrible. Hawkins as well. Hawkins is a pretty rough one. Although Hawkins, you could at least just play pallets normally half the time because you're, you know, the pallets on that map are not very great. But yeah, there's a lot of maps where his power can hurt a lot. But on most maps, most like outdoor maps especially, his power is nuts. If you play him on a map like Dead Dog Saloon, he's oppressive as fuck and good luck doing anything there. Hard to say, man. I mean, good area control, good chase, right? His chase is not like insane. Like it is insane. But like, again, like a lot of other killers, if you're willing to like sacrifice pallets, if you're willing to just let him eat like 10 pallets, you sometimes can get in a decent chase where you like buy a good bit of time. But you're probably going to use every fucking pallet in the process. You know what I mean? And also, since he's such like an area control killer, it can be really hard to deal with. EMPs are obviously a good tool to use against him, and heavy teamwork is needed, which is also important, right? It's hard to play well against him, but it is possible. Man, it's hard to say. Like, very solid chase, insane map pressure. One of the best killers in the whole game at like map. Like map pressure is such a weird term because what the fuck is map pressure, right? Like I've always figured map pressure is just your ability to kill people. Like Nurse has good map pressure because she's able to fucking kill you instantly, which means your teammates across the map have to come to you to heal you, right? Or unhook you, right? So like I almost consider that map pressure, but like his map pressure is what he just has fucking cameras everywhere, and you can biopop people and fucking teleport to them, and fucking even if they EMP them, it's still information. Like it's nuts. Presence, yeah, map presence is probably the better way to put it. His map presence is just fucking insane, like off the wall. No one else even comes close. And again, in the hands of like good, smart players that know how to use it, like watching someone like Nightlight play Singularity is like it's just crazy, absolutely crazy. And it's got to be a fucking nightmare to go against. Very, very strong killer. That being said, with the certain map, like there's certain maps that shit on him pretty hard. And I feel like even the maps that don't shit on him pretty hard, like even just like the kind of meh maps for him are still kind of meh. And I feel like, I think he definitely goes in A+, but I'm trying to think where in A+, right? I think above Oni. Pyramid Head is where I'm, like, I don't think he's above Twins. But is he above Pyramid Head? I think he might be. Yeah, he's got to be. He's got to be more consistent than Pyramid Head on most maps. He's definitely consistently putting out more pressure than Pyramid Head, for sure. Like, it's so gross going against a good Singularity, man. It's so gross. It's just the maps, dude. Like, the main reason why I'm thinking about doing this is because, again, if you load into, like, or even, like, Midwich. Like, even Midwich can be rough. Like, Midwich, Larry's, Hawkins, even some of the corn maps can be a little bit rough depending on what's around. Like there's certain maps where he's just like so brutally hard to play on. Interestingly enough, RPD is not one of those. RPD is actually a pretty good map for him, even though it's an indoor. No, he's going there. Yeah, he's going above Pyramid Head. He's very, very strong right now. He's very gross, hard to play against. He's good. He's very, very good. So yeah, I'll put him like mid of A+ for now, and I think that's good for now. Xeno is a really hard one to judge. Oh, what do I do with this? Xeno's weird because their chase power is like really strong, right? The tail attack is really good, hits over pallets and windows. Also has really good add-ons, right? Like self-destruct bolt's fucking insane. That's the one that makes you vault faster when you're in tail attack mode. The tunnels for mobility is honestly really solid too, and the tracking is really good. Like, I think there's a lot going on in Xeno's kit. At the same time, though, I think this killer is like one of the most important ones in terms of snowballing. I think if you snowball and kind of get a lot of pressure early, it puts us weird position on the survivors, because flame turrets are really good against Xeno, right? Specifically double turrets. Like if you put two turrets together and like double them up, you can just run there at any point when you're getting chased, and it's like guaranteed to knock Xeno out of power. Like you just knock them out of power and make them an M1 killer for a certain amount of time. There's nothing they can do about it, right? So you can like kind of bully the fuck out of Xeno sometimes, especially if you get ahead, right? Like if you get far enough ahead that survivors can like take time to set up double turrets and not really feel like they're, you know, fucking up by like not doing gens, right? Like if you can have two people on gens and one person setting up turrets, well, what, you know, and like if you can spend time doing that, then Xeno can get absolutely fucking bullied, right? And you can get like no hooks if you get bullied bad enough. But if you kind of get snowballing yourself as Xeno, you put the survivors in this weird position where like they can never find time to put down turrets, because they're like, fuck, I can't put down turrets, we need gen progress. Like no gens are done, right? So it's weird. It's hard for me to judge exactly where to put Xeno. I do think there is a lot of power there, and there, like, the chase potential is very, very good. The one thing that makes the chase a little bit worse than some of the other killers is that you can't cancel it, right? Like if you compare it to like Pyramid Head's power, or like Slinger, or other killers that have like hit over, like any kind of power that hits you over a pallet, you know, or like Huntress even, you know, is that they can like aim up their power and then like let go, or they can choose when to send it, right? Like as Pyramid Head, you can keep your sword on the ground for like a good, like, I don't know, 10, 12 seconds before you choose to send it. With Xenomorph, it's like the second you press M2, it's sent. There's no really like zoning with it other than the fear of them, or the fear of you doing it. So that being said, there are certain situations where like, because you're just forced to send it, if a survivor predicts it, they can sometimes juke you, and sometimes it's like not the freest. But obviously, just with good aim, as long as you don't whiff, like, right? Like, you can definitely put a lot of pressure down. It's such a tough one, man. I think I'm going to put Xeno in... I think... Here's the thing, is I think I also maybe have not seen Xeno play good enough, at like a good enough level yet, where I'm, like, very comfortable with their positioning. Because I feel like an insanely, like, I would love to see, like, a Xeno one trick get into like comp DVD or something, and then like see how hard they pop off, because I think there's a lot of potential for Xeno to be like, with respect, even in comp DBD, where like the best players in the world play, most of them are not Xeno mains. I don't know if any of them are, because I feel like typically when I see Xeno played in most comp tournaments, I don't feel like they're like as good as the killer potentially could be, if that makes sense. Like they play good strategically and like macro and like decision making wise, but in terms of like their general Xeno play, I feel like I don't think I've ever seen them at their highest potential. So it's really hard to rate this, but I think I'm gonna put them in B+. It's tough because sometimes, like, again, when the survivors get ahead and you can start to feel like you're getting bullied, and I can feel like I feel like it's almost like as low as B-. But then also, I feel like if a Xenomorph is really like hitting their tail attacks often and like shutting down loops and shit, I almost feel like it could be as high as like A-, right? Like it's so hard to judge this. And even like these, like where do I put it here? Wraith, okay, Wraith is the one. Better than Wraith or less than Wraith? That's the question. Consistently, better or weaker than Wraith? I want to say better than Wraith. I think better than Wraith by like maybe this is close though. This is so close. I don't know. I'm going to say a little bit better than Wraith. A little bit. Just a very, very little bit better than Wraith. Not by much though. Chucky. That's right. Oh, hey, they nerfed him, bro. His power goes a little bit slower, so he's obviously D tier now. Like, they killed him, baby. What are you gonna do, man? Are you telling me I can't just send my power all the time without thinking? He's like a D tier, bro. Sorry, that's my impression of everyone that overreacted to him getting nerfed. I'm still kind of mad about it. Everybody's just freaking out. Ever since they changed him, everybody just freaked the fuck out. And like, I see people putting him in like C tier everywhere and shit. It's crazy. I don't know what the fuck is wrong with everybody. This killer is still very good. Like, they slowed down his dash, and it's not like this insanely fast bullshit anymore where you get like free hits, but it's still really good. Like, most pallets, even after they're thrown, are still like 50-50s at best, and you can still mind game with it really, really well. It's still like, it's not like a, I feel like before it was like a near guaranteed hit. It was like almost like a 90% that you're going to get the hit unless something goes incredibly wrong. Like almost every time you used it, right? Whereas now I feel like it's maybe closer to 50-50. But even then, I feel like it's still like 60-40 most of the time, right? Like I feel like you're most likely getting hits almost every time it's off cooldown. And it's off cooldown every, what, like 14 seconds? He has stealth in his kit too, which is really, really strong. The third-person camera, unironically, is really good too. I think that's a big thing people underestimate about Chucky. Yeah, he's 4.4, right? Like, yeah, he's slower than most killers, but literally just a 4.4 killer, especially with his size being all small and being a third-person camera, there's so many little cheeky things you can do with that like kind of helps you like identify where survivors are, where they're going, what they're doing. Like, there's so many cool mind games you can do with it if you really take the time to learn it. And I think a lot of people underestimate that, right? Like, if you make a good play with your third-person camera and get like a basic attack, and then you have your power immediately to follow up that basic attack, you can two-tap someone in like 10 seconds. Like, I've seen it happen a lot, even to like really good players. Like, he can still be really fucking deadly. I think the main thing that makes him weaker now, I would honestly, like, before his buffs, I had him literally like, and again, I think my placement of Chucky might always have been a bit controversial, and it still might be. But before his buffs, I literally had him like up here. Like, I had him like right there with Spirit before his buffs, which I don't know. Like, I've been saying that forever. Actually, I think maybe this is less controversial, maybe more recently. I said this like from the get-go, and I think it took maybe people a while to realize. I don't know, but I've always put him like right up here. Like, he was always like a top 5-ish for me, for sure. But since his nerfs, I don't think he's anywhere near here anymore, right? He's more like, he's either right here, top of B+, or he's right here, bottom of A-. And I'm trying to think of which one. Bro, if Slinger's going to be an A-, like Slinger and Chucky, right? Like, who's stronger between Slinger and Chucky? Chucky's stronger than Slinger, I feel like. I think if Slinger's going to be A-, I think Chucky has to be too. I either need to move Slinger down or put Chucky at A-. Yeah, Wesker's here too. Yeah, no, yeah, A-. Yeah, no, I think this is fine. Chucky's still really strong, man. He's still really strong. He's got a lot in his kit. He's very deadly. He still kind of reminds me of like a mini Spirit, right? Like, again, a much lesser version, right? Like slow, right? Like 4.4, has a power that has like a decent cooldown, but the power is really deadly, right? Spirits is more deadly than Chucky, especially now, but like similar enough that I don't think I'm comfortable enough putting him anywhere down here. I think a big thing with Chucky in this tier, and I know everybody's going to get mad at this and argue this, okay? So just hear me out here, okay? Hear me out. Give people time. Maybe enough time's passed by now. I don't know. I've been saying this since like day one of his changes, but give people time to adjust, because a big part of why people are putting Chucky in such low tier is I think people are going for like power uses that shouldn't work. And I think once people kind of like start to get the hang of like when to use your power and when not to, they're going to start to see his actual power. Because any killer in the entire game, if you're just throwing their power out at times that make no sense, you're just putting your power on cooldown unnecessarily, and you're like not having it up for when you need it. Like any killer looks bad when you do that. Like literally Blight looks bad if you do that. Like any killer looks bad if you're just sending their power out at bad times when it's not necessary. So give people time to like learn when and when not to use it, and like let people like limit test it, figure it out when it works, when it doesn't work. I think it just needs some time for people to adjust. I'm pretty sure, like I promise you that if you think this is controversial, give it like a couple more months or so, and this will be less controversial. I mean, don't get me wrong, even in like a couple months, it might be more like this, right? But like the people putting this killer down in like C tier, I think are out of their minds. Like I think I don't know what they're smoking. Like there's no possible way, bro. There's no way he's that bad. No way. He's very, very strong still very deadly in chase. The stealth is brutal. Third-person camera is really strong. The only thing he's lacking is mobility. But again, keep in mind, one of the best killers in the game, Nurse, a lot of people consider the best killer in the game, also has bad mobility, and she just kills people fast. He's just a lesser version of that. So, like... Anyway, I'm moving on. Chucky is A-. I'm sorry. Unknown. This killer is super cool. I fucking love Unknown. Unknown is one of my favorite killers in the whole game. Such a good design, dude. They fucking nailed the design of this killer. They did such a good job. God, he's so fucking fun to play as and against. Well, playing as him can be frustrating because the ricochet of the thing is weird. But basically, the way this killer works is, you know, he has like that goop ball that he spits from his chest. And if it hits you, it afflicts you with weakened. And then once you're weakened, if he hits you with the goop ball again, it does damage and refreshes some of the weakened timer. You get rid of the weakened by putting your camera on the killer, but the Unknown can obviously manipulate that somewhat, right? Like you can get somebody weakened and then you can just like hide from them so that they can't break out, which is kind of useful. This is a killer that's very snowbally, right? Like if you hit somebody and weaken them, and then you immediately follow up with damage and refreshing the weaken, then suddenly they're in this terrible spot where they're injured and weakened, and they got to worry about getting hit by your power, so they got to dodge that, but they also got to dodge the M1, and it can get really rough. But the thing about Unknown is I think it's really easy to fall into like this really rough spot where you like end up wasting a whole bunch of your time, right? Like you hit somebody with your power, you get them weakened, and then you go for a follow-up power hit, and then they like juke it. And then that whole time that you were going for those two power hits, you could have been trying to get an M1 hit, right? And then they break out of their weakened, and then suddenly you're back at square one. They're full health, not weakened. You're like, well, fuck. I just spent like 20 seconds trying to get that hit, and now we're back at square one. You're healthy, and I don't have you weakened, right? Like it could be very snowbally whether you actually land your follow-up hits or not. But one thing he does have is map presence really well. Like kind of like Singularity, but like a lot less version. Like the ability to first off like mortar shots across the map and like get on and hit gens is always a scare that you could do, and you could always get random weakends that way on people. And also the husks he leaves behind that he can teleport to are really, really good. Specifically again when you're ahead, right? Like this is kind of like one of those like Xenomorph things or like a bunch of these other killers where like when you're ahead it helps you stay further ahead, right? Because if you're behind, like if the survivors are like juking you for a long time and you're like struggling to get anything going, that usually means that they have time to like cleanse, right? They'll do gens and they'll also cleanse. Like they're not really feeling rushed, right? But when you're like getting ahead, like if you're snowballing and getting a lot of pressure on the survivors, they'll start to feel rushed and they're like, I don't have time to get rid of this fucking hallucination because I gotta get this goddamn gen done before this next down happens, you know? And then suddenly all your hallucinations drop everywhere and you can teleport over the map. And like he's definitely one of those killers where once you get ahead, he feels brutally hard to go against. Like it can be so hard. But also good players can make it hard to snowball though. That's the thing. There is a lot of counterplay to him. He has a good bit of zoning, but there is still a good bit of play against him. Oh, he's so hard to rank, man. He's so hard to rank. I feel like I used to say he was like high A plus or like A plus, but I think more and more lately, especially playing like a lot of high tier games against him, like playing scrims and stuff with and against him and 1v1s and stuff, I feel like he's working his way a little bit lower. I think he's like, I would put him like top of A minus, either above or like. I think Artist is the one. If I'm trying to find the killer where I'm like I'm not sure if he's better or worse than Artist is the one. Is he better or worse than Artist? I don't know. I think he's a little bit better than. I don't. Is he? That's really hard. These two are hard. I think he's definitively better than these ones. I think he's definitively worse. Maybe he's not definitively worse. I'm gonna put him above Artist. I think he's right here. I think he's top of A minus. He's very, very solid. I think when he gets going, he's devastating, but I think he just can have rough games sometimes because of the snowballing nature, right? Like one side just snowballs so much, and I think it's very rough to like, I don't know. It's very rough to do anything with him once the survivors get ahead, I guess. All right, Vecna. This might be the most overrated killer this game's ever fucking seen. I don't like, bro. Hens is maybe one content creator on DBD where I very, very rarely disagree with Hens, but that motherfucker always puts this guy all high up on tier lists and makes all these videos about him being underrated, and I don't know what the fuck that man is on about, because this motherfucker is dog shit, dude. He is bad. He is bad. There's like certain maps where he could be okay. Like if you play him like Dead Dog Saloon or something, he could be okay because there's a lot of elevation, so you can get like free Flight of the Damned hits. I also think like maps that have a lot of like line of sight blockers, like another reason why Dead Dog is good too, because you could use main building with Flight of the Damned, because Flight of the Damned can be really good when there's like no line of sight from the survivors, because if you're on elevation, they kind of have to like try to bob and weave in between the skeletons, but if they can't see them through the wall, then it makes it harder. So like again, maps like that have elevation make them a little bit more reasonable, because Flight of the Damned becomes more of a usable ability. But unless you have like some major elevation like that, right? Like I feel like unless it's extreme, on most other maps, you could just make it a point to avoid the couple elevated areas if you're against Vecna. And then, like, again, the whole, like, spawning skeletons right on top of people's faces is, quite frankly, super predictable most of the time. Like, I feel like I'm not like a god tier survivor. I'm like a solid survivor, and I feel like I've never gone against a Vecna that wasn't like easy to tell when they were going to do that. Like I feel like you can typically tell when you're like in danger of them possibly spawning skeletons on your head, and you just like pre-crouch, right? Like you pre-crouch if you have to, and it's fine. Like it's usually not that much of an issue. Like sometimes it'll catch me off guard here and there, sometimes, but it's not this like free damage that everybody makes it out to be. It's not. The only part of his kit that's like free damage is Mage Hand, which is like a super long cooldown. It's like a 48-second cooldown or something. And even then, it's not necessarily free damage, because survivors can kind of play around that too if they know the cooldown's up. But that's like the closest you have to free damage, because I do think a Vecna that plays really correctly around Mage Hand can basically they basically only use it when they know it's free damage, right? Mage Hand should be a hit almost every time if you're smart with Vecna, but it's just that's every 48 seconds, right? Outside of that, you're basically an M1 killer with like a couple of abilities where you can try to get people to fuck up, but it's pretty low probability. I think Flight of the Damned can also be used to zone windows too, right? Like if someone's going to a window, you can send Flight of the Damned to like stop them from zoning, and that can be pretty good. Like Flight of the Damned's actually okay for zoning, right? Like forcing people to crouch just to like keep them from making a little bit of distance can get you hits sometimes too. So maybe I'm underestimating that a little bit. They recently made Fly not have collision, which is like not really that big of a deal. Like it makes windows a little bit more dangerous against them, because sometimes you got to play like a 50-50 on whether he's actually going through the window or not. But pallets are still perfectly safe against Fly, and it does nothing there. So I don't know. And the cooldown's less, which is kind of cool, because I guess you could use it more. But he's still just, I feel like outside of Mage Hand, every single one of his abilities just has pretty solid counterplay. Like Flight of the Damned will sometimes get damage, but it's not reliable at all. It's like sometimes. Fly is not going to be reliable damage in any capacity against good players. Mage Hand's the only one, and it's got a super long cooldown. So outside of that, you're basically just a 4.6 killer, right? That's really it. I would say Vecna is where? Oh man. Oh, you guys are gonna hate me. I'm gonna bottom of C+. I don't even think I can put him above these killers, dude. I really don't. I think Pig creates more pressure at loops than he does, and she also has built-in slowdown and stealth. Onryo at least creates like slowdown from Condemned, and she has like a little bits with like her disappearing and stuff. You know what I mean? I think these two killers are a little bit underrated, FYI, and I think Vecna is crazy overrated. Like crazy overrated. I'm telling you, like I've never met a Vecna that I've struggled against ever. Like he is fucking dookie, bro. He's dookie. Unless they're running like insane add-ons, right? Obviously, if you're running like insane add-ons with him, then maybe he's a little bit stronger. But even then, like with his Eries, he maybe becomes like B- at best, which is still not great, right? Like he becomes a little bit better, but not much. So like even with his add-ons in mind, he's still just not that great. Yeah, sorry. I'm gonna catch hate for that one, but it's fine. Dracula is the last killer that is gonna be up in like the top 5 potential. Dracula's fucking crazy. This motherfucker is so strong. Now the thing with okay, the killer with dragon, he's right here somewhere. Is he above twins? Is he below twins? Is he above spirit? Is he below spirit? He's somewhere here. He's somewhere top of A plus. He could even be S tier. Let me talk this out. Let me talk this out in my head. Dracula's nuts. He has bat form, which is crazy high mobility, with a teleport that can go to like windows, so he can go up and down like elevation, right? Like if you're on like Dead Dog Saloon, for instance, you could teleport up to the window and instantly you're up at the balcony. So mobility crazy. He's got Hellfire, which is pretty fucking good zoning, right? Like pretty strong zoning. Like any loop that's like low wall, or even not even low wall. Like we have mostly low walls though. Yeah, I mean mostly low wall loops. It's just absurd zoning. As long as you're like really play really safe with it. If you do land a hit with it, they get very little distance too. Wolf mode is really the big shiner of Dracula. Like wolf mode is really where he excels, because wolf mode's nuts. You get 4.6, you get haste orbs that give you haste for 4.8, like pretty often. You also have third person camera, which we already talked about on Chucky. Third person camera is really fucking strong. Plus the haste, plus you get a double dash that's like kind of similar to like Wesker's, but like a little bit less distance. And it's just overall really strong. Like wolf form, a good Dracula in wolf form is so fucking hard to avoid damage from, man. Like it is tough. It is tough. Very, very hard. So between like, it's essentially like bat form for mobility, and then you just kind of you're kind of like interchange between Hellfire and wolf form to get your damage depending on what loop they're at. And I generally feel like he is, man, let me put him in S tier and let me just think for a minute. He might be S tier. Like, dude, the mobility is nuts. He's got such good mobility. He's got a lot of like damage creating abilities, right? Like he's so strong in that regard. The thing about like the wolf form, a lot of the wolf form pounces aren't guaranteed. Like they're kind of jukeable. Maybe I'm just boosted though, but they're like a little jukeable. The Hellfire is like, you know, they can like hold distance against it sometimes. It's not like super reliable. I do think the thing about Dracula is that if you're sending your cooldowns and they're not landing, then sometimes you end up in a position where you like I have seen a lot of Dracula, even good Draculas kind of get juked a bit, right? Like I don't think the damage is like consistent enough is what it is, right? Like I'm trying to think this out in my head. I think if the damage was more consistent, then I think he would be S tier. But I think the problem is that I've seen even good Dracula players, like even some of the best Dracula players I've seen play, will still like whiff Hellfire sometimes. They'll like miss dog pounces every here and there, right? Like I just don't think the damage is quite guaranteed enough. Because I kind of love this kit. They made it risky, right? Like the dog hitbox, like the dog dashes automatically send, so you can't really just use it for zoning that well, although you can zone a little bit with it. And Hellfire has like a really like narrow hitbox, so you can kind of like, even if they're in like a 4 lane, right? Like a really tight like lane, if they like hug the left wall and you send it down the middle, it'll sometimes just not hit them, right? Like you gotta like, it's like it does have like a pretty small hitbox to the point where it's not like super guaranteed, right? I think because of that, I got to put him like here. I don't think I can justify S tier for him. I just don't think he's quite at these threes level. Like these three are just a little bit above and beyond. Like, right? I can't. But I do think he's right around these three. Like these three here are so good, dude. And I don't. I kind of want to put him above Spirit. I kind of want to do it. I think his mobility is just nuts. I think his mobility is insane. I think especially if we're taking every map into account too. Because the thing about Spirit as well is like she like struggles a bit on like bigger maps, right? Like she definitely can struggle a bit if you're playing like some massive fucking map. Dracula doesn't really care about that much, right? Like obviously every killer is going to do a little worse on big maps, but like that mobility, especially considering the fact that we're like kind of considering every map. Yeah, I think he's top of A+. Yeah, I think saying Dracula's the 4th best killer in the game is not that crazy to me. I think this is fine. Yeah, I think this is fine. I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah. It's close though. If you wanted to argue one of these, I think I'd be okay with it. But he's somewhere up here for sure. The last one's Houndmaster. Houndmaster's a weird one because they've done so many weird changes to her, man. Like they did that thing now where her dogs like vault pallets like instantly. Same thing with Windows. She's so weird. Like essentially the way she plays now is that if you're at a pallet, she kind of plays like Huntress in a way. Like you know how like if you're at a pallet with Huntress, if Huntress pulls up a hatchet and you throw the pallet, she just hits you in the face with the hatchet, right? Like obviously. Houndmaster kind of ends up being the same way now. Like if she like she'll literally raise her head, kind of like you know, it's not like a hatchet, but she'll like raise her hand and she'll whistle, basically signaling that she's lining up the dog dash, right? And if you throw a pallet while she's lighting up the dog dash, she'll send the dog, it'll instantly vault the pallet and then grab you. And then she can literally break the pallet and then hit you. It's insane. So like, she's almost like a little mini Huntress at pallets now. It's weird. You can't really just like throw pallets against her necessarily. But what you can do, and what people have kind of learned, is that if you're running up to a pallet, you can basically like just sit underneath it and let the dog grab you and then pallet stun afterwards and basically like stun the dog off of you. And it kind of makes it so that camping pallets is still somewhat viable. That being said, a good Houndmaster player can still try to bait you into throwing the pallet and then just play the pallet after the throw. Because again, like the same logic applies kind of like Huntress, right? Like on like a thrown pallet against Huntress, if you're doing circles around it, if at any point she's like looking at you as you vault, she can hatchet you, right? So like Houndmaster is faster. She's 4.6, right? So with Houndmaster, there's a lot of pallets where like you can literally just let the pallet sit and not kick it and just like circle around. And if you just send the dog on the pallet right after the survivor vaults it, he'll grab the survivor, break the pallet, easy hit. So yeah, I still feel like a lot of the pallets are pretty dangerous. That being said, if you really know what you're doing and you're really good with spacing, you can still make it pretty difficult, but she is honestly deadly. She's very, very deadly. It can be hard to keep like a good Houndmaster from getting a lot of damage on you, honestly. Not to mention her search, right? Like you can send the dog on like a search path to give you haste. That can kind of help you get across the map faster to like patrol gens. You can also use search mid loop as well, which is a big thing as well. There's like a lot of loops where you can like, again, we talked about pallet control earlier, but if you have pallet control, if you're like underneath the pallet, you can send the dog to wherever the person is, and then you can use the haste to like get like a mega lunge. There's a lot of like interesting things you can do with like the search mechanic as well that make her really strong in chase and out of chase for mobility. I think she's pretty fucking good, man. I think she's pretty good. Where exactly on the tier list is hard. I honestly haven't even thought about this. Let me think. Like, I don't think it's good as Singularity. Okay, so below Singularity. Better than Slinger. So somewhere in this range, right? Better than Chucky, I'd say probably yes. Also important to note, she has like almost no fucking cooldown. That's also important to note. Like again, a big thing with like Chucky is like Chucky's power is probably more deadly than hers. But like he's got like a 14-second cooldown. Hers is like nothing. It's like 3 seconds or something. Like you send your dog out, like her cooldown is like, did the dog bug out? Basically, like sometimes the dog will bug out and he like won't return to you right away, and you'll have to wait like 5 seconds for him to return to you. That's like the only cooldown that exists. Other than that, there's basically no cooldown on her power. So that's a big reason why she's getting put above a lot of these people too. Like the lack of cooldown makes it nuts. Like even if you try for a play and it doesn't work, there's like not that much of a punishment, right? Like there's a little bit obviously, but not much. I think, okay, better than Plague, yes. Better than, yes, I think. Yeah, I think. Oh, also I forgot to mention this about her, but her unhook play is really good too. Like camping hooks is nuts. Like if they're trying to like unhook with multiple people, you can literally have a dog grab one and then just let the dog stay a hold of them, and then you can hit the other person. Like you almost have to like triple unhook against her in order to like not 1-for-1, which is crazy if she's like camping. So her camping is really strong too. I think I might put Houndmaster at the bottom of A+. It's either the bottom of A+ or the top of A-. I mean, is there really that much of a difference between these two? I mean, maybe. Like, okay, this is like the level of killers that's at A+. This is the level of killers that's at A-. Wait, I just moved somebody. I think A-. I think A- is where she goes. Yeah, I think she's not quite like this consistent, because I feel like most of these killers are like really fucking strong potentially, but they're just not quite consistent enough. Whereas I feel like these ones are just a little bit more consistent at being insanely strong. It's like kind of how I view these tiers. And yeah, I feel like she's a little bit like she's just barely not consistent enough to like keep up with like these guys. I think. And yeah, this is the final tier list. There you go.
So that's basically it for the tier list. This is the final list. I know that there's going to be a lot of hot takes in here. I was even getting roasted by my chat at the end of this after I made it for a lot of my placements, mostly like Dredge and Knight. I'm really curious what you guys think in the comments, so feel free to let me know. I'm sure a lot of people are going to disagree with a lot of things I say, but feel free to let me know. I'd love to hear the discussion. I'd love to hear your reasoning why. I'd love to hear what I've said that you disagree with. And make sure to follow, like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitch is what I meant over on my live stream. I did this on my live stream at twitch.tv/OhTofu. And that's gonna be it for me. Thank you guys so much for hanging out, and hope to see you on the next one. Have a good one. I'll see ya. I'm out of here. See ya. See you later. See ya.